Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen, amen. Namaste.
Announcements by the Speaker.
Honourable members, I have received communication from Mr. Rushton Parry, MP, member for Miaru, who has requested leave of absence from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted. Honourable members, Mr. Winston Nanan, a former member of Parliament, passed away on Thursday, April 11th, 2024. Mr. Winston Nanan served as the Member of Parliament for Tabaquite in the first Republican Parliament from 1976 to 1981. I now invite honourable members to pay their respective tributes to Mr. Nanan. Member for Diego Martin Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, I'd like to express our sincerest condolences to the Nanan family on the loss of their patriarch, Winston Nanan, a former member of the United Labour Front and Member of Parliament for the Tabaquite constituency during the first Republican Parliament, 1976 to 1981. MP Nanan, who passed away on April 11, was one of the many Southern politicians who emerged from the hallowed halls of Naparima College. And prior to his entry into politics, he had also spent some time as a member of the teaching profession and then also as a drug sales representative. Madam Speaker, MP Nanan's career in this Parliament was relatively brief, and he holds the dubious distinction of being one of the very few, if not the only MP, who had his seat declared vacant by the then House Speaker, the Honourable Arnold Tomasos, with the effect from July 25th, 1981. This became necessary after his absence from the House without leave of the Speaker for 7 consecutive sittings. However, the general election was held on November 9th, 1981, thus ensuring the people of Tabaquite were not left disenfranchised for too long. Madam Speaker, on the 28th of January 1978, MP Nanan moved a motion standing in his name that called upon the government of the day to make adequate provisions for the thousands of vendors who operate on sidewalks and roadwalks of Trinidad and Tobago, thereby ensuring these honest citizens the right to earn a living. Madam Speaker, it was a debate in which his passion for those whom he considered to be living on the margins of society reverberated. This motion was a perfect example of him living out the reason why he felt called to enter politics, that is, his passion for those at the lower end of the economic spectrum. As we bid farewell to him today, I am humbled to walk in his footsteps and those of other parliamentarians who have gone before me, their time with us characterized only by a strong desire to serve and an overwhelming determination to put the needs of the country before the parochial needs of the respective parties. Madam Speaker, on behalf of all of us on this side, I bid him farewell and offer again our condolences to his surviving family.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to extend our deepest condolences on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition and my colleagues on the passing of Mr. Winston Nanan. Madam Speaker, the space in which I stand today is a sacred one vested in the idea of democracy, the values of bread, freedom, and justice, and the sacrifice of self and struggle. It is a space that many other people occupied before me. Today, as I reflect on these people, many of whom have gone to the great beyond, I am tasked with the humbling privilege of remembering one of those pioneers in particular in the person of the now late Winston Nanan. National service has its context. Every era has its challenges and defining characteristics. Those of us who sacrifice ourselves to serve are therefore confronted with circumstances unique to us. Yet it seems that the more things change, is more they remain the same. At a time when Winston Nanan entered the Parliament, it was a period in defining our nation's history. While the 1960s was an era full of hope and aspiration and the romance of national identity, the 1970s were characterized by an intense feeling of social injustice, racial inequality, and economic disparity. Such was the dissatisfaction of the country when the economic and social condition of the country under the then PNM administration, which had failed to deliver on its promise of a post-independence utopia, and which superimposed an elitist political will on the people of this nation. The Black Power movement of the 1970s was a response of the people against the corporate racism, elitist governance, and social inequality, which thrived under the then PNM administration. The historic Bloody Tuesday, March of 1975, was a culminating point in the labor movement, which had united against the then PNM regime to insist on a more labor-focused, socially just economy and a better distribution of wealth. And as I said, Madam Speaker, the more things change is more they remain the same. It was against this backdrop of a broken promise of a shining independent nation and again dissatisfaction and social awakening in the 1970s that Winston Nanan took the hard decision to sacrifice his youth for the interest of the nation. He offered himself for electoral politics in 1976 at the young age of 29. He sacrificed his career as an educator at the then Ibis High School to enter the Parliament during this era of social outcry. He sacrificed his own privacy and freedom to public scrutiny, and in preparing my tribute to him today, I stopped and thought about my colleagues on the opposition bench, all of whom have chosen to give up the comfort of private citizenship for the grind and challenges that come with the political guile. While we have all chosen to stand in the trenches with the poor and those oppressed by this PNM government, I realize that maybe, just maybe, that was why Winston Nanan chose a life of public service. Perhaps it was his time as a student at Naparima College that inspired a sense of nobility and pursuit of purpose, as other past students of Naparima College and San Fernando have become known for. Perhaps it was the labor movement of the 1970s that caused him to become a member of the United Labour Front, which was a joint venture with the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, the Trinidad Sugar Estate and Factory Workers Trade Union, the Transport and Industrial Workers Trade Union, and the island-wide Cane Farmers Association. And indeed, in the interest of Winston Nanan in the well-being of the working class is now historic and documented in the Hansard. Thanks to the staff at the Parliament, I was able to read that during a sitting held on the 27th of January 1978, Winston Nanan debated a motion on roadside vending and went pains to describe the conditions meted out to vendors, market peddlers, and roadside peddlers by the government at that time. Even as we pay tribute to Mr. Nanan, those of us in the opposition draw from his resolve and that of the then United Labour Front to stand in the trenches with the poor against a government who Winston Nanan and others had to fight. We draw on his sense of unity with the labour movement. Our own United Labour Front, our own United National Congress is a grandchild of the United Labour Front. And we here on this side of the bench are the political children and grandchildren of Winston Nanan and others in the United Labour Front who dedicated their years to blood, sweat, and tears for bread, freedom, and justice. We thank Winston Nanan for his role in the ULF and in this House and in the story of Trinidad and Tobago. We extend our deepest condolences to members of his bereaved family, and may Almighty God bless his soul and grant it eternal rest.
Honourable members, I too would like to pay tribute to Mr. Winston Nanan. Before embarking on a career in politics, Mr. Nanan spent several years undertaking various professional endeavours, with his first experience being as an educator. He joined the ULF at the age of 29, and upon entering the political arena as an opposition member following the 1976 general elections, he consistently advocated for the improvement of economic conditions for the working class citizens of his constituency and of the wider national population. As a trade unionist, Mr. Nanan understood the plight of vendors and worked to ensure that their concerns were recorded and represented in this House. Through his motion on roadside vendors, he advocated for legislation to protect and provide suitable accommodation for persons engaged in roadside vending. This is a testament to his desire to give a voice to the voiceless and persons who may not have been actively considered as part of the conventional business structure of our nation. I take this opportunity to express my deepest condolences to the Nanan family during this period of their immeasurable loss. I pray that the Almighty grants them peace during their time of bereavement. May they find strength and solace in the memories they shared together with their loved one. I now ask that we stand and observe a minute of silence as a mark of respect. May his soul rest in peace. Honourable members, an appropriate letter will be sent to convey our condolences to the family of the late Mr. Winston Nanan.
Papers.
The Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I have the honour to lay the following papers as listed on the order paper and the supplemental order paper. The report of the 11th Actuarial Review of the National Insurance System as of June 30th, 2020. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Accreditation Council of Trinidad and Tobago for the year ended September 30th, 2013. 4. the annual report of the First Citizens Investment Services Limited and its subsidiaries for the year 2023. 5, the administrative report of the Trinidad and Tobago Tourism Business Development Limited for the year 2019. I beg to move that paper 3 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and paper 4 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Honourable members, the question is that paper 3 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and paper 4 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. All in favour say aye. Any against? The ayes have it. The Minister of Public Utilities.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honour to lay the annual administrative report of the National Maintenance, Training and Security Company Limited, MTS, for the year ended December 31st, 2022.
The Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. The ruling which the member for Couva South refers to, sorry, beg your pardon. Papers, beg your pardon, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the annual report of the Police Complaints Authority for the period October 1st, 2022 to September 30th, 2023.
Prime Minister's questions.
The member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Question number 1. Will the Prime Minister inform this House of the financial costs incurred by the central government, the Tobago House of Assembly, and state enterprises as it relates to the management and cleanup of the oil spill of February 24th in Tobago?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, on the 7th of February 2024, the Ministry of Energy was advised by the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard that a 200-meter vessel had capsized and was beached on the Tobago coast at Cove. And it was observed that a certain amount of what appeared to be liquid hydrocarbon-based product was escaping from the vessel. Since then, Madam Speaker, soon after that notification, the Heritage Petroleum Company Limited was tasked with the major responsibility of responding to this spill, and it involved obtaining specialized oil spill equipment, machinery, and approximately 200 personnel, some from Tobago and many from elsewhere in the nation, from Heritage and other entities. The bottom line is, Madam Speaker, is that while the spill is now abated and apparently ended, the operation of cleanup still continues. There's still some cleaning to be done, and most importantly, the extraction from the vessel of about, it appears as though, a few tens of thousands of barrels of dangerous liquid, which fortunately so far has remained within the hull of the vessel. In terms of the cleanup, approximately 50,000 barrels of liquid waste have been extracted from the coastline between Scarborough and Cove, and the operation continues. I am not in a position, we are not in a position, Madam Speaker, at this time to indicate what the cost of the whole operation is, because the operation is still continuing. The rough seas in recent weeks would have delayed the extraction of the liquid that's within the hull, and we still have staff, some local, some foreign, on standby at the first opportunity to begin to do that extraction. So in short, Madam Speaker, the operation is still ongoing, and when it is completed and all costs are put forward and dealt with and accepted to be paid, we'll be in a position to give an accurate answer to this question.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much. Prime Minister, given that 2 months plus has elapsed since this oil spill occurred, and given that the Minister of Works and Transport stated in the other place that leads were being followed by the government as it relates to identifying the owners of the capsized vessel and the tugboat involved in the spill, are you in a position to update this House and country as it relates to locating new said owners?
Honourable Member, having regard to the question originally asked and the response given, this is out of order in accordance with the standing orders. Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, in keeping with cost and so on, are you in a position to inform this House how, if the government has provided financial support to the fisherfolk community of Tobago?
Honourable Member, this is ruled as out of order in accordance with the question originally posed, the answers given, and the requirements of the standing orders. Member for Point Appeal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Second question to the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister specifically state what infrastructural development has been done to date to explore and produce natural gas from the Dragon field?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, since obtaining the 30-year exploration and production license for the exploration and production of natural gas from Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago on the 21st of December 2023, the National Gas Company and Shell have been working on the elements necessary to get the project done. These operations usually have long lead time and gestation periods. For example, the procurement of survey vessels to survey the field, the planning of well work, engineering designs, costings and other necessary work for the project have been going on, and all the necessary activities are underway as precursors to any physical activity which may take place on the field.
Point of Appeal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a follow-up question, Prime Minister, given that Shell is asking for an extension of the OFAC license, which you had mentioned, before it makes a final investment decision to begin infrastructure development of the Dragon field, could the Prime Minister state if he is confident that the U.S. government will extend the OFAC license to allow Shell to invest in this project?
Honourable Member, having regard to the original question asked, the answer given, and the standing orders, this question is out of order. Member for Caroni East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, should the Maduro government continue to defy the principles agreed to in the Barbados Agreement with the Venezuelan opposition, will this affect the viability of the proposed Dragon gas field investment by the government of Trinidad and Tobago?
Again, Member, I rule that out of order. Brian. Member for Couva South.
They could hold 10, 11, any amount.
Is that the question? Can I then therefore move on to another question? Question, I believe question number 3.
Question number 3 to the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister inform this House whether the extensive review and audit of all personnel, equipment, and processes within the Strategic Services Agency, which were being carried out by retired Brigadier General Anthony Philip Spencer, has been completed?
Minister.
Madam Speaker, the very detailed work of auditing, as described in this question, continues unabated and is making good progress.
Member for Couva South.
Prime Minister, given what you have just stated, is there a projected time for this particular exercise to be completed?
Prime Minister.
Given the nature of the exercise, Madam Speaker, it would be quite inappropriate to give a deadline. We simply have to follow the evidence and treat with it as it goes. And that's what's happening, Madam Speaker.
Couva South.
Madam Speaker, Prime Minister, as head of the National Security Council, could you advise if Major Roger Best is still on administrative leave?
Honourable Member, I rule that question out of order having regard to the question asked, answers given, and the standing orders. Member for Couva South.
Prime Minister, could you inform this House whether Brigadier General Anthony Philip Spencer is part of the established organizational structure of the Strategic Services Agency, or has he been engaged as a consultant?
Again, Member, I rule that out of order on the same grounds as the other two questions that you'd ask. Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Chaguanas West. May we have some order, please? May we have some order, please? Member for Chaguanas West.
Madam Speaker, I hope that members on the other side knew that they were thumping on the arrival of Couva North into the chamber. So, Madam Speaker.
Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. May we proceed? Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the Honourable Prime Minister update this House on the support being provided to the Committee for the Repatriation of Nationals from Overseas?
Madam Speaker, the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago remains committed to ensuring the return of our nationals from conflict zones. We have often made this policy very clear. In furtherance of this, Madam Speaker, we have engaged our international partners to assist wherever they can. The issue continues to be one that is quite intractable, but we have mandated the Attorney General to draft a returnee bill which is designed to regulate the processes of return. This bill is in a very advanced stage of development. We have established a 3-man repatriation advisory committee to lend support to the governmental efforts in this regard, and the committee exists and is interacting with some of the families. We have employed 2 persons as support staff on a short-term basis to provide support to the committee, and we have identified a property for the administration and management of the returnees. The tremendous work, the acquisition of training and learning of the lead agency Task Force Nightingale, which started in 2018, continues. And Task Force Nightingale, which has worked alongside the Repatriation Committee, involves personnel from the Ministry of National Security, the Attorney General and Legal Affairs Office, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, and the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. Madam Speaker, we are also being advised by and supported by the SSA, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Immigration Authority, and the Children's Authority.
Prime Minister, earlier this week, the head of the Repatriation Committee, Mr. Nizam Mohammed, is cited as saying that Trinidad and Tobago is nowhere closer to repatriating any of the nationals. And one of the factors he alluded to was that there's a lack of cooperation taking place between local authorities and the repatriation committee itself. Can the Prime Minister shed some light on this as to moving forward, if you are aware of any steps that will be taken to ensure that the repatriation committee will get the assistance that they need in this matter?
Well, Madam Speaker, I know that there are different points of views on this matter. It's quite a complex matter, and some of the things that we have to deal with generate different points of views. So I'm not sure what exactly he's talking about. The committee exists, and the committee is part of the overall effort of the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Prime Minister, you mentioned the returnees bill. This was stated by senior officials of the Ministry of National Security in 2020 as the legislative framework being ready for laying in the Parliament. And today you are telling the House that we are on the cusp of having this returnees bill. How soon can we expect to get this returnees bill provided to the Parliament for debate?
Madam Speaker, I couldn't tell the member that today. I mean, with notice, we might be in a better position to say how soon. But suffice it to say, Madam Speaker, that the bill is being prepared, and as soon as it is ready for treatment in the parliamentary agenda, it will be.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 5, will the Prime Minister state whether any progress has been made in addressing crime since the Regional Crime Symposium at the Hyatt Regency held in April 2023?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, we have been, as a consequence of the stance taken and the matters ventilated at the symposium, been receiving much better cooperation from our international partners, which include tracking and preventing the illegal importation of firearms, making it more difficult for persons to engage in that activity. We have also been receiving information that has been acted upon to tackle transnational organized crime insofar as they impact the borders of Trinidad and Tobago and the interests of Trinidad and Tobago. We receive, on an ongoing basis, improved intelligence and training for our own law enforcement agencies and Defense Force personnel. We have, in fact, Madam Speaker, taken steps to authorize and begin to operationalize vetted units in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to bring about better information sharing with our international partners. All of these activities, Madam Speaker, flow from an understanding that Trinidad and Tobago and our international partners are better off cooperating more closely and having our agencies, which are dedicated to our national security, working together as one unit in one common purpose.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, in light of the various commitments, cooperation with international partners, training, etc., can you say how these initiatives have helped with the scourge of home invasions, robberies, and other serious crimes locally?
If what the member is asking me to do is to tie what I've just said to any particular incident or event or crime, certainly the member could not be serious. But with respect to our ability to respond to the criminal element, these developments between our government and governments that cooperate with us, friendly nations, we are in a much better position than we would have been if we had not done these things. So, Madam Speaker, there's benefit being had and benefit to be had as a result of these developments.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, are you satisfied with the present state of crime given all of this cooperation that you just referred to?
Madam Speaker, I don't think anybody in Trinidad and Tobago could say that they're satisfied with our experience with crime and criminal conduct in the country. What I can say is that had these efforts not been put in place, it would have been far worse.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Prime Minister, will you be removing the Minister of National Security anytime soon?
I don't want a place to go, but there's no vacancy here.
Questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Order. Order. Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is one question for written response, for oral response, and we will be answering that question. There were no questions for written response.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Question number 46 to the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I apologize for being in a hurry earlier on to answer my learned friend. Madam Speaker, the ruling which the member for Couva South refers to is the judgment of the Honourable Madam Justice Everson Quinlan Williams in claim number CV 2021-02431, Sindhyan Ramsarup Prasad against the Minister of Health and others, which was rendered in July of 2023. Further, the written decision was handed down on February 27th, 2024, bearing date of delivery as July 26, 2023. On the court's records, the claimant filed an appeal against that judgment, Civil Appeal number 254-2023, Sindhyan Ramsarup Prasad against the Minister of Health and others. And my office, on the 28th of August, filed a counter notice of appeal. This substantive matter is ongoing before the Court of Appeal, and therefore obviously sub judice. And the member must know that it is a breach of Standing Order 49 to pursue any matter which relates to active proceedings in any court of record until the proceedings are ended by judgment or discontinuance.
Right.
Public business, government business, bills second reading.
The Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor today to stand before this House in the current circumstances in which we all, as the citizenry.
Can I refer you to the procedure, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Again, I am clearly overtaken by my inclination to get to the business and apologize for missing the procedural rigor of this House. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago be now read a second time. And as I was saying, Madam Speaker, and again I apologize to you in particular for rushing the process, as citizenry, we are all committed to ensuring that we have an effective working police service. And we are equally all committed to ensuring that that police service is not unnecessarily burdened by obfuscatory bureaucratic processes. And it is therefore my pleasure to pilot this bill today, which seeks to make amendments to Section 123 of the Constitution in order to provide for a more efficient, expedited police service to secure the citizenry of this country against the prevalent crime circumstances. And I deliberately open in those terms to impress upon the citizenry that the outcome of today's debate, and vote will require the United National Congress, the opposition, to take the interests of this country as a central focal point and to vote in support of the government to improve the efficient functioning of our police service. The bill, Madam Speaker, before I get there, I will just speak briefly to the current process for the selection of appointments in the offices of the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner, both in acting and substantive positions. Section 123 of the Constitution empowers the President by order to set out the criteria and procedures for the selection of the Commissioner of Police and the Deputy Commissioner of Police, respectively. Section 123 also empowers the Police Service Commission to appoint persons to hold or act in the office of Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner of Police in accordance with the criteria and procedure prescribed by the President. Madam Speaker, we have had legal notices, the first, most recent, published November 25th, 2021 as legal notice number 277 of 2021, subsequently amended November 26th, legal notice number 278. That 2021 order, as amended, sets out the selection process for appointment to the offices of the Commissioner of Police and the Deputy Commissioner. Clause 3 of the 2021 order provides that the process to appoint persons to hold substantive offices of Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner of Police requires the Commissioner to conduct a recruitment process, inviting applicants for the positions by advertisement. This is followed by a selection of the most suitable candidates having regard to their qualifications and experience, medical fitness, security and professional vetting. Thereafter, the Commission is required to establish an order of merit list, indicating the highest graded candidate, followed by other candidates in descending order of merit. The Commission is required to select the highest graded candidate on the order of merit list and submit that name to the President in accordance with Section 123 of the Constitution. The highest graded candidate must receive the approval of the House of Representatives, and where there is no such approval, the subsequent nominations in order of merit may be submitted further to the House of Representatives from the order of merit list only. Madam Speaker, what I have just described to this Honorable House is a selection process for the appointment of substantive offices, that is to say, of the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner. It must be noted that the proposed amendments before the House today will not affect the selection process for these substantive offices. The process for selection of these substantive positions remains as provided in the 2021 order. What the bill before us proposes today, Madam Speaker, is to amend the selection process for acting appointments of Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner of Police. Section 123 of the Constitution and clauses 4 and 5 of the order set out the current selection process for such acting appointments to the office of Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner, respectively. Permit me now to explain, Madam Speaker, the current process for the acting positions as a prelude to the bill before us and our consideration of it. In relation to the acting appointment of the Office of Commissioner of Police, the Commission is required to establish and maintain an order of merit list, which must list the officers who are holding or acting in the Office of Deputy Commissioner of Police or Assistant Commissioner of Police. I stress that, in the Office of Deputy Commissioner of Police or Assistant Commissioner of Police, and possess the necessary qualifications and experience required for the appointment. In relation to the acting appointment to the office of Deputy Commissioner, the Order of Merit list shall list the officers who are holding or acting in the office of Assistant Commissioner of Police and again possesses the necessary qualifications and experience required for the appointment. Where the Commissioner of Police or Deputy Commissioner of Police is, Madam Speaker, or is likely to be absent from the country on vacation leave, unable to perform his or her functions due to illness or otherwise, or where the office is or is likely to become vacant, the Commission must select an officer from the Order of Merit list to act in the office of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police, as the case may be, and submit that officer's name to the President in accordance with Section 123 of the Constitution. Where the House of Representatives does not approve that said officer, subsequent nominations in order of merit may then be submitted to the House of Representatives from the Order of Merit list only, in accordance with the procedures set out in the Constitution. Pursuant to the procedures set out in Section 123, Madam Speaker, the Commission must submit to the President a list of names of the persons nominated for appointment to the offices of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police. The President must then issue a notification in respect of each person nominated, and the notification must be subject to affirmative resolution of this House. The Commission must then appoint the Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner only after the House of Representatives approves the notification in respect of the relevant office. I've just described, Madam Speaker, the process and the steps involved in the current selection process. I would mention that Legal Notice 277 of 2021 was amended by Legal Notice number 278 of 2021 by replacing the most senior officer on the Order of Merit list with an officer from the Order of Merit list. The rationale for this amendment was out of an abundance of caution. It was also necessary to remove any risk of challenge to the order so as to efficiently remove the mandatory requirement and direction of the Commission that acting appointments to the office of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner should be based on seniority. This amendment, in essence, Madam Speaker, sought to preserve the unfettered independence, autonomy, and discretion of the Commission to nominate suitable candidates for such positions in accordance with the Constitution and in line with many judicial pronouncements. Madam Speaker, the bill before this House today primarily seeks to amend Section 123 of the Constitution. One, by introducing a new Section 123, 1A, which states that subsections 2, 3, 4, and 5, which are the steps that I have before detailed, apply only to the appointment of persons to hold the office of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police. And secondly, introducing a new Section 123, 5A, which states that the Police Service Commission must appoint persons to act in the office of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner in accordance with criteria and procedure prescribed by order of the President, subject to negative resolution of Parliament. Madam Speaker, as a result of the bill which amended Section 123, this will enable as a result of the bill amending Section 123, this will allow a consequential amendment to the Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police Selection Process Number 2 Order 2021, Legal Notice Number 277 of 2021, as amended. This proposed amendment to the order would be in line with the proposals under this bill, which speak to the selection process for acting appointments as Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner. The bill essentially, Madam Speaker, aims to create a new procedure of appointing acting commissioners and deputy commissioners by essentially removing the requirement for acting appointments to be approved by the House of Representatives. It is therefore proposed that acting appointments as Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner would be made by the Independent Police Service Commission on the basis of merit and an order of merit list established and maintained by the very Police Service Commission for that purpose. Permit me, Madam Speaker, to emphasize the point, whether in lengthy and even in very brief instances of the absence of the substantive Commissioner of Police, whether due to vacation leave, mild infirmity, or any other cause, a business trip abroad, the very elaborate process involving 8 or so steps, which I have detailed before, must be complied with. The process for submitting names to the President subject to parliamentary approval for acting appointments has proved to be administratively burdensome and time-consuming. We may well find ourselves in the situation where the time required for compliance with the constitutional provisions to make acting appointments may far exceed the period of the absence of the substantive office holder. That serves to demonstrate the reason why it is only good sense to eliminate the present arrangements and to make for a more expeditious process, which does not remove the oversight of this House, and I will come to that, and does not interfere with the unfettered, independent exercise of the Police Service Commission in recommending and approving the acting positions. And that brings me to a point which I want to emphasize, Madam Speaker, going back to independence. All of us who have had the privilege of doing the profession of law well remember, and most of us were taught by Mr. Endell Thomas, who had started as a police officer of independent Trinidad and Tobago and challenged in that position a decision of the Police Service Commission. That went to court. After that was over, I may say, to my advantage and that of many other members of the profession, we had the privilege of being taught constitutional law by Mr. Endell Thomas when he retired from the police service. But the case of Endell Thomas, an Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, is very relevant to remind us of the good sense of what we are doing here today. And I speak in that regard, Madam President, Madam Speaker, I beg your pardon, of the hallowed, well-known and acknowledged jurisprudential acceptance of the wisdom of the framers of our Constitution since independence and into republicanism to ensure that we have an independent police service commission. And we have to keep that at the forefront of our discussion today, because it is that which, more than anything else, informs the good sense of what we are asking this House today to endorse and to approve by the bill that is before this House. When the Privy Council, that committee of the House of Lords, which is loved by the opposition, and they will want to keep it into the afterlife, when the Privy Council had to determine Mr. Endell Thomas's appeal, they had the opportunity to leave with us a permanent statement that remains into eternity in our democratic structure for the ethos and purpose of the Police Service Commission. This is what I'm reading, Madam Speaker, from the 1985 1981, 32 West Indian Reports, 375 at page 380 to 381. This is what the Privy Council said of the 1962 Constitution in relation to the Police Service Commission. The whole purpose of Chapter 8 of the Constitution, and they were speaking of the Constitution of of Trinidad and Tobago, which bears the rubric, the public service, is to insulate members of the public service, the teaching service, and the police service in Trinidad and Tobago from political influence exercised directly upon them by the government of the day. The means adopted for doing this was to vest in autonomous commissions to the exclusion of any other person or authority power to make appointments to the relevant service, promotions and transfers within the service, and power to remove and exercise disciplinary control over members of the service. I skip 5 lines. In respect of each of these autonomous commissions, the Constitution contains provisions to secure its independence from both the executive and the legislature. No member of the legislature may serve on the commission. All members must be appointed for a fixed term of years, and which must not be less than 3 or more than 5, during which a member may only be removed for inability to discharge his function or for misbehavior. The quarantine period imposed for making it a requirement of eligibility that a member shall not have served in any public office within the last 3 years, and also making him ineligible for appointment to any public office for 3 years after ceasing to serve as a member of the Commission, is clearly intended to avoid any risk of his being influenced in favor of the executive by considerations of the advancement of his own career. And they were speaking there, Madam Speaker, to the provisions then of Section 98 and 99 of the Constitution of Independent Trinidad and Tobago. Those provisions have been improved and are now to be found in sections 122, 128A, cross-referenced to sections 66(1)E and 66B of the Republican Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. Everything said by the Privy Council in Endell Thomas applies with even greater force to the independence of the Public Service Commission. I'm not going to belabor the point. The point is that there have been, in the face of the burdensome, obfuscated procedure for appointing acting commissions, acting appointments, there have been many calls in the public by senior members of this society, from former members of the Police Service Commission and other esteemed members of the society, for a change to be made. The processes have been described as unwieldy, costly, complex, and convoluted. Before this Parliament today, Madam Speaker, the proposed draft retains key measures to ensure that transparency is not sacrificed on the altar of expedition. The proposed selection of an acting commissioner or deputy commissioner is a process which remains within the arms of an independent and insulated police service commission, subject to other strictures of appointment from a predetermined pool of candidates created by the order of merit list. The use of the Police Service Commission as the vehicle for acting appointments provides a sufficient, reliable, and efficient avenue to secure those appointments while removing what has been publicly referred to as bureaucratic obfuscation in the process which comes before this Parliament. Madam Speaker, the primary aim, therefore, is to strike an appropriate balance. We continue to maintain the substantive offices of Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner, going through the entire rigor that is prescribed by sections 123 and otherwise of the Constitution for their appointment and affirmation before this House. But what we say with respect to the amendments that we are seeking to move today is that it is more than ample. It is more than ample that the commission, the independent commission, be allowed to effect those acting appointments without that process having to come for parliamentary affirmative resolution. And even more to the point, in the very order which the Commission will produce under the amendment which is being proposed at section 123(5)(a), Madam Speaker, that order remains subject to negative resolution of the Parliament. And we well know that negative resolution of the Parliament allows to every member of this House on either side of the bench an opportunity within the 40-day period of the negative resolution being gazetted to move this House to scrutinize that which has been done. So it cannot be said that the process that we are asking all members of this House, all responsible members of this House to adopt is going to remove complete parliamentary oversight of the process. And that allows me, Madam Speaker, to remind the listening public of the fact that by reason of the fact that what we are seeking to do today is to amend the Constitution, we must be obedient to Section 54 of the Constitution. And Section 54 requires us, in moving this bill, to ask the opposition to support the good sense of this move to amend the Constitution to produce greater efficiency by giving support to the level of the 2/3 that is required to pass this bill before this House. Madam Speaker, one cannot ask more, one cannot ask less of a responsible House of Parliament comprised of both the government and the opposition, because there is no rational basis on which it can be said, other than hyperbole, that what we are seeking to do today threatens the independence of an independent police service or the independence of the Police Service Commission. In the result, Madam Speaker, and I truncate what was a considerable speaker note that was very helpfully prepared for me by the very hard-working members of the Office of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, and I truncate it because my voice remark, unfortunately, will not allow me to speak much beyond the next few minutes. In the result, Madam Speaker, I ask, with reference to the bill which is before this House, which introduces the amendments that I have spoken to already to Section 123, that we pass this bill today, and I beg to move. Thank you very much.
Honourable members, I shall now propose the question for debate. The question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago be now read a second time. Member for Barataria Sanwan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I am very grateful for this opportunity to rise in this august chamber to debate such an important matter. And I want to deem that this is actually one of the historic debates in this 12th Parliament. It's not every day a bill like this comes to the Parliament, which requires a 2/3 majority, because what the bill attempts to do is amend an entrenched provision of our Trinidad and Tobago 1976 Republican Constitution. So this is a very important debate that we are about to embark on with respect to amending the Constitution in the context of the provisions for the appointment of acting commissioners of police and acting deputy commissioners of police. And Madam Speaker, in preparation for this particular debate, I had to go back to the report on the Constitution Commission, which is known as the Wooding Commission. And that particular report, Madam Speaker, at page 186, deals with why certain provisions are entrenched in our Constitution. And it acknowledged since then that Trinidad and Tobago is made up of a diverse society, and therefore they must have trust and public confidence in our public institutions. The report spoke of the measures of anxiety that basically agreed constitutional structures may sometimes be radically changed by a narrow majority, hence the requirement for a two-thirds majority. It requires that care should be taken to require broad consensus before any important alteration can be effected. It may lead to certain rigidity in the constitutional system, but that is no means an unreasonable price for maintaining public confidence or mutual trust. So, Madam Speaker, when the Attorney General comes today to tell this Parliament that they require our support for this particular matter, Madam Speaker, it cannot just be speaking for 20 minutes, presenting this bill to us and expect us to support it. And I say that because in the context of this particular provision that we are amending, we must look historically at what happened. We stand today, Madam Speaker, on the shoulders of two giants of this country, Mr. Patrick Manning and Mr. Bastille Pandey. That is how important this debate is here today, Madam Speaker. Two prime ministers, together with teams being led, they had the consensus and bipartisan support for this particular 2006 amendment. That caused the passage of Act Number 6 of 2006. Madam Speaker, when you look at the Hansard of Mr. Manning, he started off that debate on that day, Madam Speaker, on the 15th of March 2006. And the first thing Mr. Manning acknowledged was that they required support from the opposition, and they required consultation, they required deliberation, they required proper debate. You are amending an entrenched provision of the Constitution, and you are presenting us with a two-page bill. A two-page bill. Mr. Manning spoke of how long that matter took before it was passed in the Parliament. He spoke about issues that arose in 2001. He spoke of issues that arose subsequent to that. There was a team comprising the former member for Vancouver North, the Prime Minister at the time, Mr. Bastille Pandey. It involved Mr. Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, the Attorney General of the day, the National Security Minister, Brigadier John Theodore, a real Minister of National Security, together with Mr. Manning, the member for San Fernando East at the time and the leader of the opposition, and the member for Arouca South, Mrs. Camille Robinson Regis, who now sits here as the member for Arouca Maloney. And Madam Speaker, that particular amendment with respect to the 2006 format or formula for the appointment of a Commissioner of Police was done through extensive bipartisan consultation. And today, we are treated with scant disrespect when this government comes here today, throws this bill in our face and say, we require you to support this. I will get into the context of, Madam Speaker, our reservations and the danger of supporting this particular legislation from this government, because I will take you back into very recent history when there was political interference in the Police Service Commission that it caused the entire Police Service Commission to resign, collapse. Trinidad and Tobago was left without a commissioner of police because of serious political interference with an independent service commission. So when the Attorney General comes today to tell this Parliament that, listen, we are not fettering with the power of our independent commission, we are respecting the law, he will quote extensively from Endel Thomas, a Privy Council decision, a court that they want to get rid of, to tell this Parliament, listen, trust us, we're still maintaining the commission. Madam Speaker, they caused an entire commission to collapse in this country. And I will get into the details of that particular matter, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, when you go through what we are changing, because it is important to understand first what the system is before we can change it. And before, Madam Speaker, the 2006 amendment that we're trying to amend today is that there was a particular power that gave the Prime Minister a veto. So when the Police Service Commission recommends to the Prime Minister, this is the candidate of choice as Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police, the Prime Minister will say, well, I don't agree, bring back a next name for me. Mr. Pandey and Mr. Manning then sat down together. Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, the member for Siparia, was also part of that team, Madam Speaker, and they agreed that the process ought to be more democratic, the process ought to be more transparent, giving regard to the context of our multicultural, diverse society of Trinidad and Tobago. It made the process so transparent that it gave the elected voices of Trinidad and Tobago, the members of the House of Representatives, only an opportunity to scrutinize the particular candidates to determine their suitability for the position of Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police. So that is what the system is. The system is that when a name is generated from the Service Commission, the name goes to the office of the President, and notification comes to this House. That notification is accompanied by a dossier with the resume of the particular candidate. That is open to debate in this House through affirmative resolution. It is only when this House causes that resolution to be passed, thereafter the Police Service Commission will then formally appoint the person as Deputy Commissioner of Police or Commissioner of Police. And that is the process in a nutshell, Madam Speaker. And that procedure, where there's open debate, is now going to be removed by this particular bill. So how can you ask us to remove that particular policy, that particular law that had bipartisan support in 2006, having regard to our circumstances? You are now telling this Parliament that you do not want parliamentary oversight over the appointment of acting positions. Madam Speaker, we on this side will encourage debate. We will encourage the facilitation of democracy in our country, Madam Speaker, because I will get to that judgment that deals with that process in terms of how important it is. And I want to just look at some of the words that Mr. Pandey would have used in that particular debate, why it is we must have open debate, Madam Speaker. And what he said is this. He said, in the circumstances where the matter is subject to debate in Parliament, the chances of having the wrong person as members of the Commission or as Commissioners of Police or Deputy Commissioner of Police surely be minimized. The both of them thought it wise that those names come here to determine whether or not we have issues with the Commissioner of Police, because we understand that that office of Commissioner of Police is a very powerful office in Trinidad and Tobago that wields serious power. And therefore, we must ensure that we have the most appropriate candidate for that particular position. And it is the government, at the end of the day, we understand that even if it comes here for affirmative resolution, the government has the majority. They will be able to get their candidate of choice. But at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, it augurs well for our democracy that the opposition gets a voice. That the opposition gets a voice. And Madam Speaker, you would see also that in the cases that the Attorney General raised, he raised them in the context of political insulation from the executive, that commissions, independent service commissions, the Police Service Commission being one of them, must be insulated from political influence or political pressure or political patronage. And the Attorney General went and he quoted extensively from Thomas, Madam Speaker. And I want to make this point because the Attorney General started off by saying that this entire process is a bureaucratic process that we are engaged in. Madam Speaker, as the framers of our Constitution had said from the past, no price, we ought not to sacrifice the independence of these commissions for expediency. We ought not to do that. Madam Speaker, what we have to do is we have to understand the genesis of this bill. Why is it that this bill has now come to the Parliament after it was in 2021 the government got guidance, the law was settled with respect to the appointment of acting commissioners of police? Because prior to 2001, the Kangaloo judgment that I will refer to in a bit, the process was that the acting commissioners were done through the Police Service Commission. It is only when there was a mounted challenge to that particular appointment of Gary Griffith as the acting commissioner of police in or around August 2021 that an interpretation summons was filed in court. That matter is completed, so I'm not traversing on any rules of sub judice. And it was declared that acting appointments are not distinguished from substantive appointments in terms of the procedure for the appointment of the both positions. So, Madam Speaker, that here now, the law has now been cleared up with respect to those acting appointments coming to the Parliament for full approval. Madam Speaker, if this government was really serious about this entire amendment, they would have caused extensive consultations to be done. And you know, Madam Speaker, I have to make a point here. They have, a couple weeks ago, set up something called the Constitutional Reform Committee. What we're doing here is part of constitutional reform. Why not wait for that committee to report? And that shows the regard and the disrespect they have for a committee that they themselves appointed. Wait for your own committee to tell you what procedure you want reformed with respect to the Police Service Commission. You're jumping the gun. What if the Police Service Commission, what if the Constitutional Reform Committee has a totally separate policy or idea of reform from what we are doing here today? That committee is now being looked as though it is appointed as a sham committee, Madam Speaker. Then they told us, Madam Speaker, that the particular positions will have to go only solely to the office of the Police Service Commission. And that particular policy, Madam Speaker, if we agree with this particular bill that they're proposing, the government is doing two things in the legislation. Firstly, removing parliamentary oversight, scrutiny, and approval for the appointment of a Deputy Commissioner of Police or Commissioner of Police acting. And the second thing that the bill is attempting to do is now revoke that particular legal notice, amend the legal notice really, at clauses 4 and 5, which deals with the criteria for the appointment of an acting commissioner of police and really the qualification of who can act as a commissioner of police or deputy commissioner of police. So when you look at that, Madam Speaker, you look, and I will get to that now, in terms of looking at the legal notice and examining. When you look at legal notice 277, which was subsequently amended by legal notice 278 at clause 4, when you look at clause 4, 1, it deals and it deems this as being the process for the appointment of acting commissioners of police. And then at sub 2, it deals with that order of merit list that ought to be established. And that order of merit list are persons who are holding or acting in the office of deputy commissioner or assistant commissioner. So the first thing it tells us clearly is who can act as the commissioner of police. And then it tells us that the person who is to act must also have the same qualifications, experience required for the appointment of the office of commissioner of police. And then what is important, it then tells us the criteria which must be established or exist in order to have an acting appointment. And the first one is that the person must be absent, the substantive commissioner must be absent from Trinidad and Tobago, 2, on leave, vacation, or 3, unable by reason of illness or any other reason to perform the functions of the Commissioner of Police, or B, the office of the Commissioner of Police is or is likely to become vacant. So it establishes that. Madam Speaker, when we revoke clause 4 here, what are we replacing it with? Because the Attorney General told us what the procedure is. He told us that if this bill is passed, there will no longer be the need to come to Parliament. But when you revoke this entire qualification, you revoke the circumstances for when someone is to act, what are you replacing it with? Why didn't you show this Parliament the respect by at least giving us a draft of what it would look like? Or in the piloting of the debate, tell us exactly what it would look like, whether or not we still have to be, the Commission will have to be bound by an order of merit list. Tell us what will be the criteria for determining who fills the merit list. Tell us whether or not the acting person must still be qualified as the substantive person, because this is what you're revoking, but what you're replacing it with, that is the question. Is it that you already have a candidate in mind and that the qualifications will be tailored according to that particular individual? And that is a relevant question we have to ask here today, because you have not told us what you are replacing this with. You have not told us. Madam Speaker, when you go on to look at the other issues surrounding this particular bill, we have to look exactly at why it is dangerous to remove this parliamentary scrutiny. And I want to get to the judgment in the claim number CV 2021-03106. And this is the matter of Ravi Balgobind Maharaj against the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, the Police Service Commission, and Gary Griffith, dated the 14th of October 2021 before the Honorable Madam Justice Nadia Kangaloo. And Madam Speaker, this judgment is very relevant because this is actually the jurisprudence that settled the law with respect to how acting appointments ought to be made. And this is probably a rare occasion when in this instance, the claimant and the defendant, the Attorney General, agreed on a particular position with respect to this claim, Madam Speaker. Because what the claimant has suggested is that the appointment should have come to the Parliament. The Attorney General agreed. However, the Police Service Commission and the interested party disagreed that that was the current position, and that is what was the subject of this particular matter. And when you look at the judgment, a submission was made in that particular matter, Madam Speaker. And the submission was this. It is that the claimant had submitted that the issue of democracy in respect to this particular appointment is important, because it is important in order to facilitate and take further our jurisprudence as settled in the N.L. Thomas matter, that notwithstanding the Service Commission is not being interfered with, you give that extra layer of scrutiny and that extra layer of transparency with respect to the appointment. And at paragraph 71 of the judgment, I want to just quote, Madam Speaker, Senior Counsel concludes, and this was a submission being made, that the 2006 amendment has created a means for parliamentary scrutiny of the Police Service Commission's nomination to the office of COP, so as to safeguard the limits of the Police Service Commission's power to appoint and to maintain the doctrine of separation of powers. Senior Counsel submits that the Police Service Commission, as part of the executive, would have breached that separation of powers by appointing Mr. Griffith without reference to the legislature, because that is what was agreed upon. And then when you look also with respect to paragraph 98, paragraph 98 dealt with another decision that also informed and cleared up the appointment of a commissioner of police. And that dealt with the matter of Haridat Maraj against the Attorney General. And I want to explain what that means. When this government took power, they tried to interfere with the process for the appointment of a commissioner of police, where they inserted the minister in the process. That's the first time, Madam Speaker. That's the first time they did it. We had to go to court. The member for Siparia, as leader of opposition, went to court and got parts of that particular legal notice struck down because of being unconstitutional, because they had a minister interfering in the procedure. So that's the first step. Then the second step is that they promulgated the 2021 order in order, again, Madam Speaker, to interfere with the process. So this is number 2 now. Madam Speaker, today we are on strike 3 with them interfering with the process of the appointment of a commissioner of police. And we are telling them, after 3 strikes, you're out. After 3 strikes, you're out, Madam Speaker, because this is what it says. That Haridat Maraj case also spoke of the openness in respect of the entire process to permit the Police Service Commission to confer itself on a power of making acting appointments, Madam Speaker. And we are satisfied that the names ought to come to the Parliament. They will come with an argument here, Madam Speaker, and say, well, what if a commissioner of police is absent for 24 hours? He has to go to some Caribbean country to attend a conference. Should we summon the entire Parliament to just deal with that particular matter, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, my answer to that is this, and it is very clear. They have not limited the length of time a person has to act. If I take you back into the history of the lengthy acting appointments which featured in this judgment, Madam Speaker, I can go through it, because we looked at all of the Police Service Commission annual report. In the year 2009, there were 16 acting appointments made. 2010, 7. 2011, 4. 2012, 17. 2013, none. 2014, 12. 2015, 15. 2016, 23. 2017, 26. 2018, 37, 2019, 31, 2020, 22, 2021, 15, 2022, 5. A total of 230 acting appointments were made. And then you had Mr. Stephen Williams acting on 13 occasions in the period 1st of February 2015 to 16th of August 2018. Look at the length of time we have acting appointments in this country. You had Mr. Philbert acting between 2008 to 2010. You had Mr. Harold Phillip acting in certain positions between the period 2015 to 2020, Madam Speaker. And that is the point we wish to make, that they will have someone there acting for very long periods of time. They will do that. And what is clear, and it is settled, Madam Speaker, is that the acting commissioner of police will have the exact same power as a substantive commissioner of police. Why is it that this government is so favorable for these particular acting appointments and lengthy acting appointments? Why not tell us that if the person is out for 5 days or 7 days, that's the maximum period to act, and then you come for parliamentary approval? You know, propose something else. Don't just give us a blanket restriction and say that you don't have to come to Parliament for the purposes of acting appointment. It will hold the Service Commission and the police service itself more accountable to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to give you some examples, Madam Speaker, of some of the powers that the acting Commissioner of Police and the acting Deputy Commissioner of Police will have. They will perform crucial and unique functions such as 1, the grant of licenses, certificates, or permits under the Firearms Act, Section 17, 1 of the Firearms Act. Appointment and termination of trainees, Section 12 and 13 of the Police Service Act. Appointment of an independent management consultant for the Promotion Advisory Board, Section 8(1)(e) of the Police Service Act. The administration of award fund, Section 65 and 69 of the Police Service Act. The issuing of departmental orders, very important. The establishment and administration of operational units of the TTPS. The assignment of officers under Regulation 36 of the Police Service Regulation 2021. And this is very important. The transfer of officers under Regulation 68 of the Police Service Regulations. Madam Speaker, a candidate who goes there as an acting commissioner of police can transfer any officer from First Division go down wherever they so desire, in accordance with the regulations, of course, but they do have the power to do so. And that particular position, Madam Speaker, even if it is an acting position, wields great power. And we have seen through the history that there have been lengthy appointments. For years, persons have been acting 2 to 3 years in some instances. And also, Madam Speaker, that commissioner has the power for the issuance of standing orders and service orders. So those are some of the important functions that the acting person will also have, Madam Speaker. Then you look at the length of the appointments, you look at the powers that they have, Madam Speaker, and you can also look at the qualifications as outlined in previous legal notices that were brought before this Parliament in terms of the qualifications. But now that they're going to revoke Clause 4 and 5 of legal notice with respect to the current legal notice, the 2021 order, Madam Speaker, we don't know exactly what it's going to be replaced with.
Honourable Member,
yes.
You have 3 more minutes of ordinary time left. You're entitled to 15 more minutes to wind up with your presentation if you wish.
I'll be grateful for the additional time, please, Madam Speaker. And, Madam Speaker, let's look at the current situation. We have outlined the procedure. We have outlined our concerns with respect to the proposed bill. But let's look at what is happening now. Our current Commissioner of Police is Mrs. Erla Harewood Christopher. And Mrs. Christopher, retirement age of 60 was on the 15th of May 2023. And the government, acting pursuant to Section 75 of the Police Service Act, would have extended her appointment from the 15th of May 2023 to the 24th of May 2024. So I saw, Madam Speaker, an ad went out for the position of Commissioner of Police. I believe the Police Service Commission is engaged in this exercise. I want to ask the government whether or not the Police Service Commission knew of this bill or they were consulted on this bill, Madam Speaker. But the top cop gets 1-year extension in terms of her appointment. So therefore, if the Police Service Commission brings back substantive names now, and that substantive person goes, for example, on leave because they need our support for the passage of this particular legislation, the status quo remains, Madam Speaker. The Police Service Commission has engaged in their work. They have engaged in looking for a new Commissioner of Police. Maybe they have information that Mrs. Harewood Christopher's appointment is not going to be further extended and it may come to an end on the 24th of May 2024. We don't know. Maybe the government can tell us whether or not Mrs. Christopher is going to get a further extension or not. And that is something you should be transparent about. We're dealing with the Police Commissioner of Trinidad and Tobago, not a PNM Police Commissioner of Police. And all of that, Madam Speaker, when you look at the jurisprudence and you look at the reason why we are here in terms of the debates, in terms of the scrutiny of the names, open debate, transparency, accountability, it is all to build public trust and confidence in the various institutions. But, Madam Speaker, I have to look at a particular article which remains a dark day and a blotch in our nation's history and democracy. There's an article, Madam Speaker, from the Trinidad Express dated the 14th of March 2022. PM, it was me. PM confirms he was the high-ranking official who met the Police Service Commission chairman at President's House. Madam Speaker, that is a very important matter because it deals with acting appointments. A chairman of a Police Service Commission went to the President's House on the 11th of August 2021 to deliver a list for the appointment of a substantive Commissioner of Police. Coincidentally, The Prime Minister knew that the Police Service Commission chairman was going to be at President's house that day and coincidentally had a report with him to coincidentally give to the chairman of the Police Service Commission, and the President would have been the one at that time, as a bystander, to have that meeting at the President's house. Immediately, Madam Speaker, that list was withdrawn from the President's house on the exact same day. And today we have confirmation now that it was the Prime Minister who caused Bliss to run with the list. And then Bliss went back with another list the next day on the 12th of August to appoint Gary Griffith as the acting Commissioner of Police, the same fella they did not want to appoint as the substantive Commissioner of Police. Madam Speaker, that entire debacle left such a dark blot on our nation's history. It caused the triggering of impeachment proceedings against a sitting president of Trinidad and Tobago. So important that matter was, Madam Speaker. And today, this government is coming to tell us we must trust them with the appointment of an acting Commissioner of Police and Deputy Acting Commissioner of Police. We say no to that, Madam Speaker. We cannot trust the government, we cannot trust the Prime Minister, and we cannot trust the chairman of the National Security Council. Never. Because we have seen here, Madam Speaker, what they are capable of. Never. They are capable of crashing in independent institutions, truncating procedures, Madam Speaker, and removing a sitting Commissioner of Police. And today you want to tell us, listen, all you don't need to see the name, all you don't need to debate the name, give them the power, let them do it. We say, no, Madam Speaker, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Madam Speaker, I am passionate about this matter because this involves our nation's national security. This involves our democracy. And we have seen, Madam Speaker, when they do things like these, you demotivate the junior officers. When you have the higher executive, Madam Speaker, being appointed through curry favor, friends and family, Madam Speaker, you demotivate the entire service. So that is why we are on this side proposing that the procedure not change, let the names come to the Parliament. I think, Madam Speaker, this is the first time in our nation's history, maybe in the Commonwealth history, where Deputy Commissioner of Police is on bail.
Oh, yes. Correct.
It's on bail. Madam Speaker, this is probably the first time, and that was a name approved by the government. Shame. But at the end of the day, we had the opportunity to have a say in that matter, Madam Speaker, and we are not prepared to. We are not prepared, Madam Speaker, to lose our voice in this matter. We on this side will continue to stand for transparency, we will stand for our nation's democracy, and we'll ensure that we hold this government to account. I thank you very much.
Member for Laventille West.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for an opportunity to make a brief contribution in this very important Constitution Amendment Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, the effect, as has been made known by the mover of this motion, is to rearrange the procedure for the appointment of a person to hold the office as an acting appointee to the positions of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police. And this is to be done by removing the requirement of seeking approval from the House of Representatives in respect of an acting appointment. And I understand this to be a reasonable time. The member for Barataria San Juan would have spoken about Stephen Williams as an acting Commissioner of Police. The problem with that is that Stephen Williams acted as Commissioner of Police for 6 years or thereabout. That is not what we are speaking about. Quite a distinction. Under the UNC, they had, on the voice of their Attorney General, saying it is better to have a man acting. You could have him under control in a Zambo lock. You could have him under control. And they did that for 6 years. Yep. We came to this Parliament when Edmund Dillon, the member for Point 14, was a member of Parliament here and Minister of National Security. and took action to appoint a substantive commissioner of police. They went to court. The court construed the order.
Small amendments.
And the court made small amendments the same. At a later stage, they went to court to try to obstruct that, as they always do. At a later stage, we had a substantive commissioner of police appointed for the service of Trinidad and Tobago. No, we were always committed to appointing a substantive office holder and deputy commissioners. And as soon as the opportunity arose, today we have a substantive commissioner of police and 3 substantive deputy commissioners of police in Trinidad and Tobago. That's our record. That's our record. Madam Speaker, and as the AG would have alluded to, what we are trying to deal with is the practical operation and functioning of the police service. And the best example is where the police commissioner, as I have had to deal with, Commissioner Erla Christopher, wanting to go to an Interpol police leaders conference in the Bahamas or someplace else for 2 or 3 days, where it is possible. She wanted to attend the Association of Caribbean Commissioners Conference, which she hosted as commissioner in Trinidad and Tobago sometime last year. But the process for replacing her with an acting appointee is obviously administratively cumbersome if one has to go through the procedure of a notification by Her Excellency, and it comes to this Parliament, and we debate it, and then we appoint someone to act. When we were conducting the appointment of deputy commissioners of police, that matter arose in this Parliament. That matter arose. It was the member for, well, the late member for Naparima, who raised that matter as a problem and called on the government to respond to that obvious problem. I now understand why he has problems with the UNC and has no confidence in its leader. The government took note of it. I remember the member for Diego Martin West speaking as Prime Minister, responding to that and acknowledging, and even did so on a public platform, that that administrative, cumbersome arrangement is a matter that we have to address. And no sooner that he said so in public, unsurprisingly, the UNC, the opposition, jumped to their feet and say, we will never support that. But they applauded Rodney Charles when he raised it in the Parliament on that occasion, the member for Naparima. But that is no surprise to me. I was in this Parliament when I witnessed from the opposition bench between 1995 and 2001, when the UNC negotiated and fought hard among CARICOM leaders to have the Caribbean Court of Justice situate in Port of Spain, Trinidad. I was here. And they were very gung-ho and loud in their support for the Caribbean Court of Justice. But alas, there was an election. And in 2001, in a locked situation where they agreed in what came to be known as the Crown Plaza arrangement, both parties, both leaders allowed the then president, Arthur Napoleon Raymond Robinson, may his soul rest in comfortable and perfect peace, allowed him to take the decision as to who will lead this country and get us out of the gridlock that we found ourselves in, the quagmire, the constitutional quagmire we found ourselves in. And President Robinson, who was a member of Parliament for Tobago, East was on the government side. They supported his ascendancy to the office of president. And when, as president, this matter came before him, he looked at it, he looked at us, he looked at our condition, he looked at their behavior in government for 6 years, and found that there was an absence of moral and spiritual values, and banished them away from the government, and allowed Mr. Manning and the PNM, who by implication was possessed of high moral and spiritual values, and went into government. But as soon as we went to government and raised the question of constitutional reform for the advancement and the development of Trinidad and Tobago, the United National Congress, niet, nada, no. And I remember the then leader, Mr. Basdeos Pandey, may his soul rest in perfect peace as well. At least he was a very witty and intelligent man. If not, he was. And he said, to justify the UNC's unprincipled position, wanting today, fighting because they wanted the court to be in another jurisdiction, fought for it in Trinidad and Tobago. And Madam Speaker, he said, no piecemeal thing would work here with the Caribbean Court of Justice. We want whole-scale constitutional reform. And that was the basis on which they took objection to various attempts to modify and to improve and to grow our constitution to meet the national expectations and needs. So I'm not surprised at the UNC's position. The member for Naparima, speaking for them in a debate on the appointment of deputy commissioners, wants tremendous applause from them when he raised the point of the cumbersome nature of these arrangements. Madam Speaker, the member for Barataria Sanwan spoke about the 2006 Manning and Pandey collaboration and consensus when we were reviewing the position or the process for appointing a commissioner of police. And as he correctly pointed out, there was a veto power. Whatever happened when the service commission, the police service commission, would have assessed and recommended someone for the position of commissioner, the prime minister under the constitution at the time had a veto power. He would have had information that might have led him to saying no. Because sometimes, unfortunately, proper record keeping is not observed. Sometimes in our way, truthful things are not recorded. So if you take a strict legal approach, sometimes it doesn't always give you the right answer. So the Prime Minister may have had information that the rest of the Parliament and the government may not have had. And he had a veto power, which worked for many decades in this country. It wasn't no peaceful consensus. I was present, and he was forced to give up that veto power. It was the UNC in opposition at the time who demanded in this consensus arrangement, according to Barataria Sanwan, who demanded that that veto power be removed and that we put in place the new process which we are dealing with here today, which has manifest an administrative quagmire where you have the commissioner wanting to leave the jurisdiction or a deputy, and there ought to be someone to fill the gap. But the UNC is as unprincipled as that. And therefore, we have that issue. But yet, the UNC spent 5 years and 3 months in government between 2010 and 2015 with 26 seats. And all they did was to corrupt themselves out of office for the second time and do nothing to amend the Constitution, as we have said. And the records will show, I rehearsed it in this Parliament before, while they were in government, on 17 occasions when they came to this Parliament for amendments to the Constitution, they got the support of the PNM in opposition in this House. That's our record. Because we are the gatekeepers for the state. We are the ones who uphold the integrity of the state. We are the protectors of the state. That is the PNM's record in this country. We are not unprincipled like the UNC. Madam Speaker, the Commissioner of Police has some functions which members of the public may tend to overlook. Plays a very important role. And there are certain statutory powers and functions that are exclusively exercisable by the Commissioner of Police. These powers and duties must be carried out on a continuous basis, where the substantive office holder is absent, so as to ensure that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and by extension the service and the protection of the nation, must continue and cannot be interrupted because the substantive office holder is unable to function out of the country or absent from duty for some good reason. A family member can fall ill, need an emergency operation, a family member can die. These very human things affect all of us. Some of the duties solely exercisable by the Commissioner involve matters of promotion and retirement of police officers of the 1st Division. Only the Commissioner could treat with that. The signing off on classifications for sick leave. Granting approval, renewals, and revocation of firearms users' license and FUECs, firearm users' employee certificates. Only the Commissioner could do that, and as I said, on an ongoing basis. The Commissioner, as accounting officer under the finance regulations of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, is responsible for the financial resources allocated to the police service with respect to the procurement of goods and services. The power to hire police and non-police officers on contract under Section 22 of the Police Service Act, Chapter 1501, exercisable only by the Commissioner of Police. The Commissioner of Police is the only one of 3 officers lawfully authorized to intercept communications in the interest of national security. She holds that authority along with the Chief of Defense Staff and the Director of the SSA. And the Commissioner of Police is responsible for authorizing public marches under the Summary Offences Act, Chapter 11, and so on. These are some of the functions that are exercisable exclusively by the Commissioner. And therefore, you must have someone in that office at all times and on a continuing basis. And the government is here today not wanting to interfere with any constitutional rights and interfere with any independent organization. The government here today is simply saying, when you have a circumstance that requires the absence of the substantive office holder, be it commissioner or deputy commissioner, and he or she, for a short period, he or she has to leave the desk, leave the function for a very short and reasonable time, rather than have to come here, I agree with Naparima, and go through the long process. And Madam Speaker, I must at this point remind us, it was the member for Oropuch East speaking in the last discussion or debate we had on the appointment of deputy commissioners, pointed out, really speaking, and remember, in 2006, in 2006, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister had a veto. And that was forcibly removed. It was a condition to get the support of the then opposition. The member for Oropuchi speaking here very recently said, Madam Speaker, when we come here to debate the nomination of Her Excellency, all we really have is the resume. We don't know the process and the result of the vetting, the background checks. All we have here is the resume. The member for Oropuch East dealt with this issue, showing how limited we are in what we do. On a few occasions, we may know the office holders or the prospective office holders personally and have come to some judgment, maybe on the basis of some bias or what you heard or whether he or she smiled with you or they appeared hoggish, something like that. But he alluded to the fact that even the parliament, which the UNC insisted on as part of the process, was limited in its effect. It was largely a risk and a guessing game, because all of the assessment would have been done inside of and by the Police Service Commission. And as we propose to deal with this administratively cumbersome quagmire, we say it is the Police Service Commission that determines who would have been a deputy commissioner to act as commissioner for 3 days in the first place. It is the Police Service Commission that would have gone through the entire process. It is not that some stranger from outside of that arrangement appears in here to act or appears at the desk on the police commissioner's desk to act. It is someone who would have already been screened and vetted and assessed and found to be qualified in accordance with the Constitution and the law. Who would be a deputy commissioner? And it is the Police Service Commission, and I can bear testimony to that, that determines a merit list even for acting positions. There's a merit list developed by the Police Service Commission for acting as commissioner, and a merit list designed by the Police Service Commission for acting as deputy commissioner. It is the Police Service Commission decides that. So the process will then be, if we go along with this simple amendment, the process would be when the commissioner is ready to leave the country to go to St. Vincent or Grenada for 2 days to a commissioner's conference, she notifies the Police Service Commission, to whom she is also accountable, and she notifies the Minister of National Security. And having notified the Police Service Commission, it is the Police Service Commission, on the basis of the merit list that it would have developed, that offers someone to sit in that office until the next 2 days when the commissioner appears. What is so troubling about that? But we have to hear all about interference with the Police Service Commission. And the best example Barataria San Juan and the UNC could offer is the Prime Minister saying it was me. And the Prime Minister of this government saying that he was the one who went with information, so valuable the information was, that the Police Service Commission took notice of it and acted apparently on it. And let me say this, Madam Speaker, based on the constitutional arrangements and this business of independence, independence doesn't mean you don't talk to nobody or you're locked in. You are part of the democratic process. And the Police Service Commission is not insulated from the principles of democracy. And the Police Service Commission, acting on behalf of all of us, needs information in order to arrive at the best decisions in the wider and deeper public interest. And therefore, the Police Service Commission takes submissions from Tom, Dick, Harry, Jean, and Jenny. People write to the Service Commission and they are entitled to receive that, contemplate it, respond to the citizen organization's right. The Prime Minister is a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. He happens to be Prime Minister, and fortuitously, as Prime Minister, he got information about the goings-ons with the firearm users license regime in the police service. After the Police Service Commission initiated an investigation through retired Justice of Appeal, Mr. Stanley John, and the information that Mr. John and the information that was in the possession of the Prime Minister felt or motivated him sufficiently to go to the Police Service Commission and to share that information with it, And it, having received that information, found that it was sufficiently useful to act upon it in the way it did. And I think the Prime Minister deserves a national award for that. Honorary doctorate. I think so. He don't need no honorary doctorate. He earned one with a first-class undergraduate degree, first-class master's, and top-of-the-line PhD. And with that, he didn't have to get his name on no Ramai SDMS school. We don't do that. Class is class, crass is crass, but class is class. You understand? It was no interference, it was providing vital information. And thank God they did, because it was Mr. Stanley John who described the same information as a well-oiled criminal white-collar enterprise that transpired under the nose of Gary Griffith, the then commissioner. For the UNC, they will overlook that. I have never heard one of them comment on that matter in public, because they could absorb that. Light attracts light, and darkness attracts darkness. And as Mansour Ibrahim said in this chamber at the opening of the parliamentary term many years ago, Dr. Mansour Ibrahim, even if you smear a dead pig with honey, that will not make it sweet. So, Madam Speaker, I have outlined to you the role of the Commissioner of Police and why you must have one at the desk, and why it is quite reasonable to have someone sitting in that continuing important office, but for 3 days, a reasonable time. And by the way, I want the member for Barataria Sanwa to know, this question of reasonable time was always in the contemplation of this government, because we saw Stephen Williams act for 6 years, and we had no business liking that. So we knew, coming to this House for this debate, we will propose reasonableness. As for the deputy commissioners, there are 3 posts of deputy commissioners in the police service: Deputy Commissioner Administration and Support, Deputy Commissioner Intelligence and Investigations, and Deputy Commissioner Operations. Madam Speaker, you would have heard the member for Barataria Sanwa. Me ain't drinking no bush tea for nobody medicine. I'll tell you one thing, I had to deal when we were discussing those deputies with certain allegations made. I heard him here stand up today to talk about who on bail. I mean, they're just shameless, you know. All he have to do is look around himself and he'll see who on bail. And for what? $1 million bail. But he looking in the police service. They don't like police, you know. They're afraid police, you know.
Some police.
Their problem is police and law and order, you know. Did you say palm oil? Madam Deputy Speaker, Madam Speaker, I just want to say, I said in this Parliament in that debate that the Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of intelligence and investigations is alleged to have driven her car accidentally over a child's foot. You are witness? As read in the newspaper. And that is the allegation. They reported that she came out of the car, assisted the youngster, dealt with all of this. But eventually, somebody on the last day that that offense for the traffic matter would have become statute bad, caused her to be charged for the offense. And the member for Barataria Sanwa stand up here today, she on bail. They are just so crass and want to destroy every institution and every individual that stands for good and law and order. But the one institution they have never been able to conquer is the great and the mighty People's National Movement. And we stand tall on our record in this country. They had 2 chances at government. They corrupted themselves out of office on one. Madam, I'm going. Madam, let me continue.
Okay, so member for Laventille West, you have a few minutes left, 3 minutes, and I would guide you with respect to relevance. Okay, please. So while I'm on my legs, you have 3 more minutes left of ordinary time. You're entitled to an additional 15 minutes, if you wish, to complete your contribution. So that, would you be exercising that?
Most certainly,
so you may
Madam
proceed.
Speaker, and I thank you for your guidance. The UNC is very irritating, but I do understand. Madam Speaker, the primary function of the Police Service Commission is to ensure that there are suitably qualified and experienced persons from within the police service to substantively hold these high offices. Where for a multitude of reasons there may be no available substantive officer, it is still the responsibility of the Service Commission to find a person to fill the office. And I just want to say in passing, the question of debating the acting appointee is a relatively new issue in Trinidad and Tobago. Relatively new. And it arose in the judgment that the Attorney General made reference to, a matter out of 2021. Prior to that, judgment by Madam Justice Nadia Kangaloo, where there was an examination of the legal order that gave rise to all of the discussions you're hearing now. Many, many, many persons have acted in this country over decades as deputy commissioner, as commissioner of police, without any debate in this house. That is not new to Trinidad and Tobago. Under the 2009 order, more specifically. We never had to come here when the UNC was in office, repeating on a 6-month rotation for 6 years the appointment of Stephen Williams. We didn't have to come here once. We trusted the Service Commission. We accepted their deliberations. We relied upon them. That is respect for the independence of the Service Commission. That. Think about interference. So, Madam Speaker, it was in that matter where a UNC activist, whose name is used in many matters, against the Attorney General, the Public Service Commission, and interestingly enough, the then commissioner, whose name I don't want to call either. It's nauseating. It is in that matter that this issue of debating an appointment for a deputy commissioner came alive. And here we are today. And we are simply saying, let the Police Service Commission do the business. This is a very short state of affairs, and we can proceed accordingly. Madam Speaker, I have had as Minister of National Security to grapple with this issue, and I might share with this national community that on 2 occasions, because of the cumbersome nature of the process, and because of the time frame that the travel of the commissioner was to have ensued, we lost a couple opportunities for her to benefit from international best practice exposure. So when the Attorney General prepared this bill to amend the Constitution and brought it to the Cabinet, we all saw it as a very good thing. But we knew coming into this that the UNC is obstructionist, obscurantist, and given to pestilent behavior, if I may say so in a very non-pejorative manner.
Okay, is an admission of that you really scrutiny the standing orders. So I'd ask you to watch your language.
I thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm not a man given to many words, as you might know. But Madam Speaker, I have particular difficulty while speaking with the UNC in front of me. All things are possible. And all of the descriptions I can contemplate, Madam Speaker, are apt, you know. Yeah. But this is the Parliament. So, Madam Speaker, I simply want to say on behalf of the people of Laventille West, and I want to say on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, that our efforts here today is in the best interest of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. It is in the best interest of the nation state that is Trinidad and Tobago. There is no question of wanting to interfere with the deliberations of the Police Service Commission. That has to be cast aside, because as I demonstrated, it is the Police Service Commission who would have appointed the deputies, one of whom might act. It is the Police Service Commission who would have developed the merit list for those who should act as commissioner. And it is the Police Service Commission who will develop the list of acting persons, even for the rank of deputy commissioner, out of the ranks of the assistant commissioners and other seniors, upon their application and its consideration. So this is what we offer to this House. We don't anticipate the support of the United National Congress. It would be a madman, right? We don't anticipate it. We have a duty to the people of Trinidad and Tobago to make available to them the best solutions, the best ideas, the best thoughts, and the best legislation. That is why I've said before, as I close, Madam Speaker, when we draft legislation, when we contemplate legislation inside the PNM, we know we have to cater for the criminals out there who are terrorizing the country. But we also have in the back of our minds, in addition to the criminals, we have to cater for the UNC. When we plan in law to fight crime and criminals in this country, when we are doing that, not only do we take into account on your behalf, people of Trinidad and Tobago, your protection, your safety, your sanity, the enjoyment of your property, we also, from the criminals, we also have to bear in mind the member for Siparia, the member for Oropuch East. They stand in the way of good governance and and the protection of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
That implying that the political leader of the United National Congress stands in the way of progress
Thank you very much. Their record speaks for itself, you know. Their record speaks for itself. I stood up in this parliament already, and when I looked down the bench, when I was a policeman, Madam Speaker, before I close, there was a document with mugshots called the Rogues Gallery and Album.
So before you go any further, I'll remind you of Standing Order 48.1 before you go any further. Okay, so Member for Laventille West, let's get back to the debate.
I thank you.
Whose face you saw?
I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Tell us whose face you saw.
Madam Speaker, my colleagues want to know whose faces I saw. But I think...
Let's the historical lesson, I think you will give it another place.
I thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I close, suffice it to say, quite apart from the harassment and the bombardment of our colleagues on the other side, I stand here today proudly in support of the measures in front of the House, since I am aware in my own intellectual assessment that they offer a very great solution to an obvious problem which can quite easily be resolved in the way in which this bill suggests it. Madam Speaker, with those few words, I thank you.
Member for Oropuch East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to make an intervention on this very important matter. Madam Speaker, I begin
with a quotation from an Express editorial of April 3rd, 2024, quite recently. And in reference to the member for San Fernando West, the title of the editorial, Laventille West, Minister of National Security, the title of the editorial is New Heights of Emptiness. Madam Speaker, I imagine the Express can now serialize this initiative. After today's presentation, there will be New Heights of Emptiness Part 2. It says, as Minister of National Security, and I mean great respect, I don't, but well, I mean great respect to the member, Fitzgerald Hines has come to be defined by his wordy and meandering expositions on crime-related issues, unquote. Madam Speaker, I could not have put it better myself. Madam Speaker, he is now provoking me, having spoken for 45 minutes, about what he talked about, pepper, who? Pepper. Yeah. Madam Speaker, please. So I begin by placing in context the member's presentation. As the Express has editorialized, Madam Speaker, this is not the first time. In fact, the member has the unfortunate experience of having about 5 editorials of equal merit. Thank you very much, attorney from Karen East. But he has distinguished himself among the editorial writers as someone who is vacuous, empty, lacking logic. Today, in a few bizarre, Madam Speaker, in the few waking moments that he shared with us today, it demonstrates this capacity, this ongoing capacity to be out of sync with the reality in Trinidad and Tobago. You see, Madam Speaker, the Minister of National Security, as I said, who has been editorialized about 5 times in that vein, regrettably so, came today and he was bloviating. And that is not an obscene word. He has been bloviating in the Parliament and trying to convince us that there is some merit in the matter that is before us. Madam Speaker, I begin by asking the question, what is the relevance of this bill? Of what relevance? I remember a friend in UWI used to always begin an argument of what relevance is this bill? Why are we here? We could be dealing with other matters involving the terrible and tragic situation at the Port of Spain Hospital. We could have been dealing with matters dealing with the murder rate. We could have been dealing with matters detection. The intelligence community has collapsed under the watch of the member for Diego Martin West and Laventille West. But we are here with an amendment which the member admits that he will not get the support of the loyal opposition, but he brought it anyway. They brought it anyway. What are they doing? What would cause this amendment to rear its head? What? Are you playing some game with the population? Maybe with the opposition? Are you in some misdirected way misinterpreting political reality? But you are doomed to fail. Why do you do this? Could we not have gone on to some other bill? But Madam Speaker, the member made reference to a few matters which I'm committed to respond to. Because, Madam Speaker, I have also been part of history. And being part of history, I cannot allow the member for Laventille West to give his interpretation that may be misleading, misguided, misconceived, and missing the mark, without adding, of course, my own recollection of that period. Madam Speaker, there was a time in this country when a police commissioner, deputy commissioner and so on, would be appointed and no one would know. No one would know. 2 or 3 weeks after, months after maybe, you would wake up one day and hear Commissioner XY or Acting Commissioner AB made a statement and you say, well, where he came from, generally he. Where he came from. When was he appointed? And you don't know. And Madam Speaker, that was how it was with many service commissions and so on, but the Commissioner of Police as well. And when in that historic pack of the 2006 period or thereabout, the former Prime Minister Patrick Manning, who himself had some modicum of decency, unlike others who may be incumbent. Madam Speaker, when Mr. Manning and Mr. Pandey, then leader of the opposition, met, along with the member, I think Barataria Sawa told us, the member for then Aruka South, the member for Siparia and others, met, they fashioned a new framework for the appointment that would bring some measure of confidence and trust in the police service. And nothing was forced down the throat of anyone. Mr. Manning spoke to that, and Mr. Manning had the distinction of firing the member for Lavantil West, I believe, removing him from ministry and the House. He has a checkered career as a sitting member, meaning he came, he left, he returned, and he will leave again. So, Madam Speaker, the former member for San Fernando East understood his capacity, understood his competence, and removed him. So, Madam Speaker, the constitutional amendment bill was to bring transparency, openness, in a system that is not the best. And I go to this issue now. The system we operate with today is not the best. The member for Lavantil West accidentally fell into the truth by quoting something I said. He tripped and fell into the truth by quoting a matter I raised. Quite by accident. Could not have been his intention. So, Madam Speaker, this is not the best system. When I have spoken on several occasions on acting appointments and so on, I've made the point, it's not the best system, but it is a system that has benefit, that brings merit. Had it not been for this system, we would not have stood in this House and raised certain concerns about one Wendell Lucas. We have no personal issue with him. We raised that issue. And then in a shocking revelation, the government, with one member not knowing what the next member doing, they voted against him. It happened here. Am I correct? It happened here recently. But it allowed the parliament, and meaning the people, to have an assessment of a candidate in a situation that is not the best. This is not the best, and we'll come to that. It's not the best. But something works. So, Mr. Attorney General, why are you shaking the building to find out why it's standing? Were you shaking the building to find out why it's standing? This works, but it is not the best. But we get an opportunity to interrogate a curriculum vitae, a resume, to raise issues. This is a small society, Madam Speaker. The Commissioner of Police, Deputy Commissioner, they don't come from another state 8,000 kilometers from Port of Spain. They don't take a flight to come here. They don't travel by aeroplane to come to Port of Spain from Point Fortin. This is a small country, village country. So you will discover things, you will learn things, you will get an assessment of people. In our community, we know each other in terms of persons who are in public service and so on. We know the strengths. Well, we don't know the strengths. We know the weaknesses of the Minister of Finance. We know what he's about. It's a small society. And therefore, Madam Speaker, in small societies, people are not alien. That's the point I'm making. So in a system where you reflect on an acting commissioner, acting deputy commissioner, we do our investigations and we come up. It was the opposition that raised issues of Wendell Lucas. It was the opposition. It was the opposition that put on record that an appointee for the position of acting deputy commissioner of police had a challenge. I was shocked, as all of us were, when the member for Lavantil West went on record a few moments ago to say, what happened is this person accidentally hit someone on the bus route. How you know it was accident? You were in the car? You were in the car? How you know it's accident? How can you assess that? How can you come to that conclusion? Unless you were a witness or you were in the car. I pray to God. Oh yes, what's the name of that dog? There was a name. Motley? Oh no. Madam Speaker, the Minister of National Security ought not to be making a conclusion on a matter that is properly before the court involving a senior police officer who allegedly hit someone on the bus route. We do not know if it's accident or not. The court will determine that. But the Minister of National Security ought not to be going on record in the public, in Parliament, to indicate that that event was an accident. That is wrong. And he ought to apologize elsewhere and everywhere for that. What is it when you accidentally, well, I don't know, I wasn't there. When you bounced down Mali, that was an accident? I don't know. Mali was the name of the dog. Yeah. I mean, it was such a cruel irony that someone clad in that hairstyle will bounce down a dog named Mali.
Sit down. Sit down. He didn't raise a standing order.
There's no standing order,
Madam Speaker.
I will not give way. But I can't give way. I'm on the floor. What standing order?
He's empty.
I rise on standing order 46, 48.4, and 48.6. I am being told, we are being told by the member for Orupuchis that I bounce some dog. If it was a big truck and it was the UNC, would it be a different thing, Madam Speaker?
Right. Okay, so I overrule. I take it that a certain amount of banter is allowed, but Member for Orupuchis, let's get on with your presentation.
Madam Speaker, let me move on because that matter seems to irritate the member. So I leave that. Madam Speaker, I'm a great friend and I'm a pet owner, and these things affect me as well. So I just think of my poodle Louis, and it affects me. Madam Speaker, let me. Yeah, Louis. I pray to God you don't go driving anywhere I live in, you know. Madam Speaker, so we have this issue now. The member raised the issue of accident, and I put that to rest already. I want to move on from that. So, Madam Speaker, why do you come to the Parliament? And I made the point on my legs here several times. I was in the famous cage during the COVID business and so on, making the point that there are weaknesses that we face, that a commissioner of police, a commissioner of police is going to attend a conference in Grenada, a 2-day conference. The Parliament has to put an acting commissioner in place, and we have to meet. But you know, in practice, what has happened? Has that really been a big thing? Has that really taken all day and all night? Generally, the government will come with the motion. At the end of some important business, they will say, we'll deal with this motion now. Or, in fact, to my knowledge, they have never opened a sitting of Parliament dealing with that motion. It comes as a motion, and generally there is one speaker. Generally, it is the member for Diego Martin West. Generally, it is myself, and on an occasion, another member on both sides. But really, that has not taken all of our time. That has not wasted 24 hours and 36 hours of Parliament time, because the Parliament meets generally every week, and you bring the motion and we discuss the motion, but there is a certain transparency. Now, you could have saved this if you were advancing another position to say, listen, we can make some change or contemplate a change where if an acting position is for 7 days or less, there's a particular route, but once you are contemplating over 7 days, well, there's another route. The other issue, please, the Minister of Finance is disturbing me with irrelevant matters. We will come to this property tax order and so on at another time. Madam Speaker, then you could have had another thought. You could have said, where in the event that someone who is new, a new name arise, who has not acted before in a position, is coming before the Parliament, we will now have that must be referred to Parliament. As opposed to someone like the member for Diego Martin Northeast, who has acted, I believe, how much it is, 74 times as Prime Minister? Yeah, 73.
And we never come to Parliament.
I got it wrong. I was thinking of Ghana and India coming up. So 74 with Ghana and India, but we will come to that. In fact, we should have a bill where we debate the travel of the Prime Minister. Every time he wants to travel, we debate that.
So
but that is not a matter for today.
Please.
No.
Let's get on with the business.
Madam Speaker, that's not a matter for now. But the point I'm making is that you could have had a different way to deal with this, where if a commissioner is going for 2 days or less than 3-4 days, you have a framework to allow that. If it is someone new or someone who has never acted before, they must be subjected to the Parliament. But they don't contemplate this. They come with this blanket amendment to the Constitution as a free-for-all. So what prevents, I'm just thinking of a name hypothetically.
Entrenched provision.
Brent Clement? I don't know if that is a real person. What prevents somebody named Brent Clement from becoming acting deputy commissioner of police in the heat of the night, at the midnight hour? Nobody knows because it is not subject to parliamentary scrutiny. What? And then Mr. Clement goes on to act for 2 years as a deputy commissioner of police. What prevents that with this amendment? So you cannot come with an amendment like this, which is reckless, which undermines our democratic fabric, which undermines principles of the Constitution that allows for transparency, openness, accountability. No one could stand after and say we had a debate on an acting deputy commissioner and it took 8 hours and we had to call the parliament on Saturday and Sunday to do that. No, we did that as a little debate coming to the end and so on. One speaker. Because how much you could talk on the CV? How much?
Half an hour time.
And Madam Speaker, I've made the point repeatedly. The issue is not the process as it is now. It's to deepen the process so that when we debate an acting deputy commissioner, for example, we get not only their CV, but we get the list, the assessment, some type of summary from the Police Service Commission as to the assessment. How did you arrive at this person as opposed to the other person? There are persons who have applied for positions in the hierarchy of the police service. Names come to mind, Mr. Ramisa, Mr. Ram Kelawan, I believe. And they don't know why they were not selected. They have Andre Norton. They don't know why they were rejected. They have no clue as to why they were not selected. Their name did not come before the parliament, and the members of parliament don't either. We depend on the Police Service Commission without coming to the parliament and telling us this is the assessment. This is the list that we came up with based on this assessment. And now we cannot micromanage. It is not that we will see the name John Smith and say, no, when it came to public speaking, when it came to communications and public relations interface, he should have gotten more points. We can't do that. That's not our job. But we must see what were the criteria. What is the assessment? Who were those persons assessed? So we know that when the name is before us, the Police Service Commission believed that this was the best person in the circumstances. You can deepen the process to allow Parliament more scrutiny, not to remove scrutiny from the Parliament. And I come to the judgment. Madam Speaker, I come to the judgment of Madam Justice Nadia Kangaloo in this matter, Ravi Balgobin versus the Attorney General Police Service Commission, Gary Griffith. And you know, I have read this, Madam Speaker, and what stood out for me was at page 60 of 60, 234. And I quote from the judgment, which is critical, which the member for Laventille West cited, but not read. He did not read it, but he cited it. It happens with him. Very often. 234. This court concludes, and I quote, this court concludes with the answer to its initial question posed through the lyrical genius that was Lord Austin. Who will guard the guards? We, the people, through our elected representatives. So when you ask, as I think the Prime Minister asked recently, who will guard the guards? We must guard the guards. The parliamentary representatives on both sides of the aisle. That is our sacred duty. And when you remove jurisdiction, you remove this right to guard the guards, you undermine democracy, you undermine the Constitution, you undermine the law. No one, including the Attorney General, I listened to him, Madam Speaker, I was not in the House, but I listened attentively to him. And I was waiting for the compelling argument. His argument was this thing too bureaucratic. Maybe too bureaucratic for him, because I think he couldn't submit some documents in a Miami court. But it is not too bureaucratic for us. Not too bureaucratic. We have no problem coming here, receiving the names, and having a short, very short debate on the names, so we can bring information to you. Members of the government themselves are not aware sometimes of what is happening in the parliament, of names, of proposals. I am wondering whether the Police Service Commission knew of this amendment. No. And we are reliably informed that the Police Service Commission are in the dark on this amendment. And I'll ask the government to clarify whether it was made known to them, whether they made comments privately or otherwise on this. We are told that someone went for an interview for a position in the hierarchy of the police service and told the Police Service Commission, all you don't know, it have a bill coming to take away all of that. What manner of madness is this? And the government is on their way out. They ought not to be tampering and interfering with the Constitution as they are on the way out. Allow a new incoming UNC administration to address these matters. Allow that. The Minister of Finance himself has signaled to the national community through his actions that they are tired. They are tired, they suffer from fatigue, and they are just waiting to demit office. So do not tamper with monotonous frequency, with critical issues, entrenched provisions in the Constitution. Now is not the time for that. Now is the time for little amendment and whatever and so on. But not critical amendments like this. You ought not to be doing this in your last days in the government. Madam Speaker, so I made the point, a critical point from the judgment. And the Minister of National Security describing the current situation as administrative quagmire and so on. But it is so because the population don't trust you. They don't trust you. They prefer it comes to Parliament and we have a debate. And the member, Madam Speaker, I was not going down this line, but I must, the member for Laventille West spoke about the years 2010, 2015, and so on, what happened there, and we had an acting commissioner of police at the time, and so on. He made reference to that. I wish he did not, but he did. Madam Speaker, there was a time quite recently under this administration when there was no commissioner of police, not even acting, and the Minister of Finance had to do some type of gymnastic type of work, given his able frame, had to do some gymnastic work to ensure that there was in law an accounting officer to disperse monies to the TTPS. Who did you appoint? The PS, I think? And the Minister of Finance, yes, Madam Speaker, I will not allow him to distract me today. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance had to put things in place to get an accounting officer for the TTPS because there was no commissioner of police. So you look at 2010, 2015 and say we had an acting commissioner. You had none. None. And today, they stand today and tell us the importance of this role, FUL, and importance of, interception. You know, the last person to talk about interception of communication and surveillance is member for Laventille West. The entire intelligence community has collapsed. Today, you don't know what is happening. It's compromised. It's compromised, Madam Speaker. And the members speak again about the FUL and so on, that the police commissioner is critical to that. When they had none in place, the member made reference, I believe, to the Stanley John report. And what was he mentioned in summary form, what he believed the summary to be of that report. But where's that report? Where is this Stanley John report? Is it in the hands of the police for investigation? It's certainly not before the Parliament. Is it prevented from coming here? Did a court injunct somebody from bringing it here? Where's the report? If it is a report that speaks to wrongdoing, particularly criminal wrongdoing, one assumes it's in the hands of the police to meet and treat with it and take whatever action deemed necessary. But the member stood today and talked about the Stanley John report and what the report said, knowing that none of us read it. The member for Laventille West has a habit of telling us, a talent of telling us what are in reports that nobody read.
Not even him.
One assumed that he would have read it. But it's a big jump. I think it's a tenuous assumption. It's a tenuous assumption to believe that the member read it himself. Madam Speaker, the member for Laventille West as well premised his contribution on this issue that today was this great day that we are coming to an end of bureaucratic and administrative, blockage and so on, I just want to ask the member and the government, name one person who has been recommended to act in the position of deputy commissioner or commissioner. One person that by administrative and bureaucratic obstacle could not come before the parliament. When? One instant when one person could not come before the parliament. Is there one? And if there's one, raise it today. Tell us that on this weekend last year at this time, somebody was supposed to act and the parliament didn't meet, so they couldn't act and so on. That is not so. The opposition would meet and treat with any acted appointment at any time, at any day, at any place. We would meet and treat with it. So this constitution amendment bill is the government trying to do something which befuddles us. They may be up to some, I'm choosing the word, Madam Speaker, very carefully. They may be up to something that we don't know about. I think that's best. They may be up to something that we don't know about. Why are they doing this? Why they choose now? Of all the time in the world, you choose now. What are you coming to test here? Are you coming to test the resolve of the member for Rapuchis? Are you coming to test the resolve of the member for Siparia? What are you coming here to test? What is this? A litmus test of something? You must tell the population why you came today to waste parliament time with an amendment that you know cannot. When I first heard of this bill, without reading it in depth as I did, I asked my colleagues, I said, what majority that requires? They said 2/3. I said, why would they do something like this? You all have some maths problem? SCA just finished, you need some lessons on maths? What is 41? And 2/3 of 41. And how much you have on that side? Awake. How much on that side? Awake. And what you have on this side? Couture. Mischief. And Madam Speaker, they are here to play games with an important issue of the Constitution. And I would advise them that this is not a time, and this is certainly not the place to play games. When you have had the murder rate so far for 172 and counting for the year, when everything in the national security framework appear to have collapsed, that you are coming here to tinker, to play games with the Constitution. When, as the member for Barataria Sawa pointed out rightly, there's a freshly minted constitutional committee led by a former speaker, senior counsel Barindra Yudhishthira Sinathan, meeting up and down the place with 10 people. But they will eventually meet with 11. And
Member for Rapuchis, you have 2 more minutes of original speaking time left. You're entitled to 15 more minutes.
I appreciate it.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Why does the government not go to the Constitution Reform Committee and their meetings and so on, and go with the bill? Indicate that this is a good bill. This is a good idea. We'd like you to adopt it. We'd like to hear a public discussion on this. Yeah. And I think that the party, the member for Port of Spain South, is in the driver's seat of legislative innovation. And they will not take it in their party. There was a time in this country, I mean, I am so horrified always to be going back. But when Mr. Manning led that party, Mr. Manning would come to the population and indicate that these critical matters of national concern will first go to the General Council of the PNM. And they will debate on a Saturday all day. Today they have no party, they have no leader, they have no chairman. Go to Balize House and get a consensus from your party on matters like this, and then come to the parliament. Yes. Come with the weight of the party. And you have a brand new, I think, how much? $45 million? 100 million? Yeah, what? Madam Speaker, you leave that right there.
Air condition.
Air condition?
Air condition.
Madam Speaker, let's move on.
I've allowed you some.
Yes.
Let's get on with the
Yes,
bill.
Madam Speaker. So we are here today to indicate to the government that they must have respect for the Constitution. They must have respect for these sacred principles and values. They must do nothing to undermine that by creating a new framework, which is the objective here, of bringing into play a system where no one knows of acting appointments. And there's a related issue. Now, the government has, in this bill, of course, indicated, the bill here, that they are, I just want to read it to properly quote, by the Commissioner of Police, Clause 4, Madam Speaker, and the bill, an act to amend the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, number 1 of 2024, Clause 4, the Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police selection process number 2 order 2021 is amended by revoking Clause 4 and 5 of an order. What order it is now? Order 277. So I have this in my hand as well. Clause 4 and Clause 5, they will now, of course, process is amended by revoking. So they are revoking 2 clauses from an order. The order is Legal Notice 277. But what is 4 and 5? 4 and 5 deals with nominations submitted in accordance with the procedure of the Constitution in respect to candidates, where the process allows for a dossier to be referred to the Parliament, the application of the candidate, the biography, the resume, and so on. But importantly, at 4.2, where they deal with for the purposes of acting appointments to the Office of Commissioner of Police, the Commission shall establish and maintain an order of merit list, which shall, in descending order of seniority, the officers who are holding or acting in the Office of Commissioner of Police or Assistant Commissioner of Police, possess the qualification and experience required for appointment to the Officer of Commissioner of Police. The long and short of this, I just read from the order, but we have had the situation where there is an order of merit based on seniority in descending order, meaning the most senior and the less senior and so on, right? We have operated with that for some time. They have taken steps to remove, in the first instance, descending order of seniority, and now the entire 4 and 5. Gone down the drain. So there is no need now for seniority. There is no need for merit list, order of merit list. Why do you undermine what would be 16 years of progress? 16 years of progress in building this type of framework for transparency in one fell swoop. You destroy it away. 4 and 5 gone. Seniority gone. Merit list gone. Everything gone.
Bliss gone, bliss gone.
Bliss come, bliss gone. List come, list gone. That is what they're doing today. Why are you doing this? Is there somebody with less seniority, less a constable that you want to marshal into the office? Is there a constable you wish to marshal into a particular office? Is there one that you wish to appoint who may not be senior, but you want to appoint that person to a particular office? And therefore you have to come to the Parliament. You have to come to the Parliament to remove Legal Notice 277, Clause 4 and 5, because you have in your intent to take persons who do not have seniority and who are not qualified and who are not on our order of merit list. Because it may well be that members of the Police Service Commission are telling you that no, they are not prepared to break the law and the Constitution like this. So you come to the Parliament and say, let's break the law here. Well, we make the law because the Parliament can't do it with the requisite majority. You want to change the law to accommodate persons who are not qualified, who are not senior, to act in positions of Deputy Commissioner of Police and Commissioner of Police. And that is the risk that we face with this. So the Attorney General, I am sure in his winding up, he will be a bit more intelligible. I'm sure. I think his strategy, which I picked up early, is that his first speech is normally unintelligible, and later he tries to make amends. I think it's a useful strategy. I think in his winding up, he will really tell us something more. But he may not want us to debate that, so he'll use that for the winding up, which really I think is not in conformity with the standing orders, but he can do it. He will do it. Because there must be something else you are concerned with here. It is not time. I mean, I keep on saying it cannot be time. The Minister of the Minister of National Security has now taken it upon himself to speak on motions filed in the name of the Prime Minister on acting appointments. And that's not a problem. So if the Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, is not available for this debate, as he traveled 19 times in 3 years, he was not available. But if for any reason he is not available, the Minister of National Security can pilot the motion for an acting appointment, and we can debate. And Madam Speaker, you meticulously manage these debates so we can speak on nothing more but the CV and the resume. With meticulous care. So we ensure that these debates are constrained, within a frame. And within the standing orders, they don't lead forever, all night, and generally one speaker each, so that the Attorney General must tell us, beyond what he's concocting as administrative and bureaucratic obstacles, what else?
Concocting, I think, is that word. If you could withdraw that word and find another word, please.
Okay, I withdraw the word.
Yes.
I leave that blank and wordless. I won't find another word, but I withdraw the offending word. Madam Speaker, so again, I'm just reflecting on the notes I took from both the Attorney General and the Minister of National Security. The Minister of National Security, of course, spoke. Oh, he made an interesting point, which I'll just reply to in closing, that he said during the time of 2010 to 2015, the then PNM opposition, he was not in opposition, Mr. Manning had fired him by then, but they supported many constitutional bills and so on. I want to remind him that the People's Partnership had 29 seats. We did not necessarily need the support, but we accept the support. We did not need it, but we accept it. On many occasions did receive support from the then opposition, most of the members that Mr. Manning had selected, not himself. So it was not any magic that we were able to get. The other point is that when we came with law, we came with intelligible, progressive law. You were almost compelled to support us. Well drafted. So there was a compulsion that you must support. Today, what do we have? This. And we can't go further with this, Madam Speaker. We can't go further with this. So, Madam Speaker, in closing, I just want to tell the government that, look, you know, Madam Speaker, I want to tell the members of the government, the Attorney General pilot this matter. You know what I know, and I know what you know. You know you're getting no support. Don't spend too much time. I mean, have a heart. Don't waste time. Not called a heart, but have a heart. Don't waste time. You know, and this argument is weak. Now, if there may be other compelling arguments, let us have it. We can engage, for sure. But this one argument of administrative bureaucratic is weak, is useless, is frivolous, vexatious, and it ought to be debunked. And therefore, without any further argument from two leading ministers of the government, Madam Speaker, I want to assure them that you don't have our assurance of support. Scotland, sit down. Scotland, sit down.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I regret to say that the appeal which I made when I piloted this bill seems to have fallen on deaf ears, because the one thing and the only thing that I have heard in the remarks that have come from the other side is captured in one word: hyperbole. Vacuous hyperbole. They have had nothing useful to say. So my remarks will be limited. I remind the citizens who are following this debate that the purpose of this amendment is to amend Section 123 of the Constitution to remove a cumbersome procedure relating to the appointment, the acting appointment of commissioners of police and deputy commissioners of police. That is simply what this amendment is about, to remove a cumbersome procedure and to promote the efficiency of the management and administration of the police service so that they can get about the business of managing crime and capturing the criminals who are in our streets. The short point, Madam Speaker, is that we have to move on with the business of the state and not waste the citizens' time with a lot of vacuous irrelevance. A couple of things that were said by the other side allow me to make some very brief remarks. The member for Barataria San Juan made a lot about the fact that this government did not use the opportunity to consult with the opposition on this bill. But I remind the member, Madam Speaker, that by letter of the 12th of October 2023, the Honorable Prime Minister wrote to the Leader of the Opposition announcing the appointment of a committee of parliamentarians, which was to be chaired by myself as Attorney General, and invited the opposition to meet with the government to discuss, among other things, legislation that we would want to consult with the opposition on. That invitation for consultation that was provided by the Honorable Prime Minister by his letter of the 12th of October 2023 was never taken up. It was made a parody of by the Leader of the Opposition, so that it is quite disingenuous for the member of Barataria San Juan to be telling the public today that in bringing this bill to the Parliament, the government made no attempt to consult with the opposition. There were many things that we wanted to sit, and let me say it, and I'm saying it for the first time, because I don't stand up and make empty speeches for the sake of making speeches that appear in the media. The opportunity was offered by this government outside of this Parliament, where there is an easy temptation on the part of the other side to gallery to the camera. We offered an opportunity to the other side to appoint a committee of parliamentarians to meet with the parliamentarians named by the Honorable Prime Minister to consult on progressive steps to be taken in the interest of the public of this country. And among the things that we would have consulted on would have included legislation such as this. We gave them an entire list. They never took it seriously. So it falls from, well, let me restrain my language. It is disingenuous of the member for Barataria San Juan to say that the government has made no attempt to consult. The other point that I make, Madam Speaker, is with respect to the much-cited Kangaloo decision. The Kangaloo J, Justice Kangaloo J's decision in the Ravi Balgobin, I almost said Valgobin, Balgobin Maraj against the Attorney General decision, was a point that has produced an opportunity for us to be here today to bring the bill that we are putting before the House in order to move forward.
That's right, that's right.
In accordance with the law. The member for Barataria San Juan quoted from paragraph 71 of the judgment. I've read paragraph 71. I went back. I have the judgment here. I went back and I read it over time, over the last couple of minutes while we've been here, trying to understand the relevance of paragraph 71 to this debate. I cannot understand the relevance of the reference that he made. What does paragraph 71 tell us? Paragraph 71 tells us, in the judgment of Madam Justice Kangaloo, Senior Counsel concludes, and that was Senior Counsel representing the applicant, Maraj concludes that the 2006 amendment has created the means for parliamentary scrutiny of the Police Service Commission's nominations to the Office of Commissioner of Police so as to safeguard the limits of the Police Service Commission power to appoint and to maintain the doctrine of the separation of powers. Senior counsel submits that the Police Service Commission, as part of the executive, has breached the separation of powers by appointing Mr. Griffith to act without reference to the legislature. What is the relevance of that to what we are here about today? With the greatest of respect. The point is that following on this decision, we've taken the decision to make for a workable environment, and we have asked the opposition to agree with us, and we sit here for the last couple of hours and listen to vacuous nonsense. And the last thing that I will say, Madam Speaker, before I take my seat, I caused an amendment to be circulated, which I hope is with all members. And the amendment which I have circulated, because much has been said about the fact that we are seeking to amend without reference to any time limits. Well, we are going to ask the House, when we go into committee stage, to further amend section 123(1)(a) to read subsections 2, 3, 4, and 5 apply only to the appointment of persons to hold or to act for a period exceeding 21 days in the office of Commissioner of Police. Yes. No, later on it comes on not exceeding. Yeah. And if it exceeds that period, then it will go for an affirmative resolution. So we are not bypassing the oversight of this House. We are saying, let us put things in place briskly, and if, when the nomination comes forward, there is some credible basis, and one would strain to find that, on which the opposition will wish to object to the nominee who has come forward, then they can come and they can go by way of affirmative resolution. And we say in the further amendment to the order, which is going to be subject to negative resolution, the Police Service Commission shall appoint persons to act for a period not exceeding 21 days in the office of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police in accordance with the criteria and procedure prescribed by order of the President, subject to negative resolution of Parliament. So we say, fine, let us put a limit on the time period that the acting can take place for. And beyond that, it is either going to be subject to affirmative resolution or on the negative resolution side, which still allows for the scrutiny of Parliament, we will come here and we'll debate it. Let us hear what the opposition have to say to that in committee stage. And with that, I beg to move. Thank you very much.
Honourable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago be now read a second time. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
The Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 68(1), I beg to move that the Constitution Amendment Bill 2024 be committed to the Committee of the Whole to consider the bill clause by clause.
Honourable members, the question is that the Constitution Amendment Bill 2024 be committed to the Committee of the Whole to consider the bill clause by clause. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. This House will now go into the Committee of the Whole to consider the bill clause by clause. This bill has 4 clauses and a preamble. Attorney General, are you ready? Yes. Whip? Yes. Can we do 1 and 2 together?
Yes, please.
Clauses 1 and 2.
The question is that clauses 1 and 2 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 1 and 2 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 1 and 2 now stand part of the bill.
Clause 3.
The question is that clause 3 stand part of the bill. Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have circulated an amendment which I expect that all members will have, and I propose an amendment to the amendment already before the House, and that is at clause 3A in paragraph A to insert after the word whole the words or to act for a period exceeding 21 days in, and then to continue the office of Commissioner of Police, so that that section, subsection, would read, if amended, subsections 2, 3, 4, and 5 apply only to the appointment of persons to hold or to act for a period exceeding 21 days in the office of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police.
Whip.
Do you wish me to proceed to the second amendment, Madam Speaker?
Please.
Yes. And I also propose in
amendment.
Yeah. They're both in clause 3.
Yes. Okay, so we
Yes.
take the vote after. Okay,
Yes.
fine. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. And I also have circulated the amendment to clause 3B, that is to say, section 123 of the Constitution, if amended, would read, that is to say, that the words, after the word act, the words for a period not exceeding 21 days be inserted, in which case, if the amendment were considered in the whole, it would read 5A, the Police Service Commission shall appoint persons to act for a period not exceeding 21 days in the office of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police in accordance with the criteria and procedure prescribed by order of the President, subject to negative resolution of Parliament. Those amendments I propose respectfully.
Member for Superior? No? Okay. Okay, so the question is that clause 3 be amended as circulated. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The question is that clause 3 as amended now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
The question is that clause 4 stand part of the bill. The question is that clause 4 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clause 4 now stands part of the bill.
The preamble.
The question is that the preamble to the bill be approved. The question is that the preamble to the bill be approved. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The preamble to the bill is approved. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be now reported to the House. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This committee meeting is now adjourned. The House will resume. The Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I wish to report that the Constitution Amendment Bill 2024 was considered in the Committee of the Whole and approved without amendments. With amendments, I beg your pardon, with amendments. I now beg to move that the House agree with the committee's report.
Honorable members, the question is that this House agree with the committee's report on the Constitution Amendment Bill 2024. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago be now read a third time and passed.
Honourable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago be now read a third time and passed. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? No. I think the ayes have it. This bill requires a two-thirds majority. We'll have a division.
Mrs. Robinson-Regis?
Aye.
Dr. Rowley?
Yes.
Mr. Imbert?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Mr. Dayal Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Al-Rawi?
Aye.
Ms. Beckles?
Yes.
Mrs. Webster Roy?
Aye.
Mrs. Cujo Lewis?
Aye.
Dr. Gadsby Dolly?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. McClushy?
Aye.
Mr. Cummings? Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Dinobrega?
Aye.
Mr. Leons?
Yes.
Mr. Manning?
Aye.
Mrs. Morris Julian?
Aye.
Mr. Scotland?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
No.
Mrs. Prasad Bissessa?
No.
Mr. Charles?
No.
Miss Amin?
No.
Mr. Indar Singh?
No.
Mr. Padarath?
No.
Dr. Munilal?
No.
Mr. Hussain?
No.
Mr. Ratiram?
No.
Dr. Budo?
No.
Mr. Rambali?
No.
Mr. Ram?
No.
Dr. Ragbir?
No.
Mr. Tanku?
No.
Miss Benjamin?
No.
Miss Mohit?
No.
Mrs. Haynes Allen?
No.
Dr. Sicharan?
No.
Madam Speaker, the results of the division are as follows. 21 members voted for, 18 members voted against, and there were no abstentions. 18.
Honourable members, with a division of 21 members voting for, 18 members voting against, and no abstentions, the bill is not approved. Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to Friday, the 26th day of April at 1:30 p.m. That day is Private Members' Day, and we would be grateful to hear from the member for Point-a-Pair what we will be doing on that day. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I didn't realize next week would have been Private Members' Day. I will communicate in due course to the Leader of Government Business what we will be doing.
Honourable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to Friday, the 26th day of April, 2024, at 1:30 p.m. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to Friday, the 26th day of April, 2024, at 1:30 p.m.